Not to disappoint you, but there isn't really a lot to report when we pull out the first report of the year. What I would like to do is just give you an update on what we've been doing all summer, where we stand as a district in terms of our reporting obligations. I'll go back over what our focus is during the summer. After the year end, the scramble, we go through a process of first having to close out all of our grants in the grant system. Okay? The lead up is to the EFS filing, which is due on September 1st. It's a mandatory required filing. Your district is basically a pariah if you miss the deadline. It's just not one of the filings that the state has a sense of humor about. In order to do the EFS filing, you first have to make sure you've reconciled with your special education reporting system, and you also have to make sure that in the they call it e-grant management system, it's the online version, you have to file expenditure reports for every open grant, whether or not you spent money, didn't spend money. They then feed via backdoor into the EFS system. So what the EFS system does is it essentially requires you to upload your entire accounting system after you've coded it to the state's accounting matrix so they can actually read your data, because presumably, districts operate on different packages. With any amount of luck, you have reported the same information in both places. The system does reconciliations. It then asks you questions based on whether data looks distorted from the prior year. It asks you to clarify certain things, like for instance, one of the questions we got this year was, why does it seem like the benefits for special education are different than the benefits, say, for the rest of the district as a whole? Well, special education teachers don't have numbers. That's 16%. So the quick answer is we isolate special education as a reporting entity, but we don't necessarily isolate other groups in the district, like, for instance, custodians all pay numbers, paraeducators all pay numbers, etc., nurses, secretaries, etc. So that's an example of a question. It then dovetails to some of the information that the town reports in kind as it relates to, for instance, providing us with crossing guards, school resource officers, etc. Long and the short of it is, when you've magically answered all the questions, it tells you can certify your collection. We did that on August the 30th, 31st, a day earlier or so. And then there's a second bite at the apple in October or November when they basically open the system up again if you really need to make adjustments. So we fully complied with our requirements as it relates to the grant system and EFS, but it takes essentially a massive reconciliation process all summer to get to a point where you're ready to put the numbers up. We then turn around and we set up, you recall at the last meeting, you approved an allocation of the budget, and that was approved by the voters on June 1st. We then load that into the system, we provide budget data to the various schools, we then deal with the onslaught of purchase orders. Now, last year we instituted a district-wide purchase order system. It really worked well. It gave us a real ability to be able to cull through last year's data to have a better idea of what was going to be recurring, and things like repair maintenance contracts, educational programs. Then each of the schools submits a volume of purchase orders because they want to make sure they have all their supplies on hand for the first day of school and all their educational materials and everything else. And so we get through all of that, and everyone was able to successfully purchase everything that they needed. And then we begin the audit process. For us, it's really incumbent on us to make sure that we get everything reconciled in the EFS file before we actually start providing information, because otherwise we're just doing it twice or three times. So where we are right now is we're ready to go for fiscal 23-24. The reporting system, as you can see, I've provided you with a report which basically projects what we're going to spend and what it is we have allocated to each of these line items. There are some items that are on tonight's agenda that I've been in consultation with Dr. Compton about. And as I indicate on the sentence under the second paragraph, the changes that she is proposing result in a net zero change to our budgeted amounts. So I'm not going to put in here that there is a variance when I believe Dr. Compton's contemplating coming to this board for approval on certain items. So we'll get to the end of the first quarter, probably by October, November, just about when we start to gear up for the budget. We have a pretty good idea of where we are, at least with the things we know about. I would say, based on that, if you have any questions, I'm certainly happy to entertain them.
I have a question. The money that we found out, I don't know, it was MERF, the reduced amount that we would have to contribute was a savings for both the town and the Board of Ed. Where did we see that reflected in the budget, if at all?
That was reflected when I did the allocation of the budget back on August the 7th.
Mm-hmm. And I unfortunately was not at that meeting, so.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, the money that we saved, so they reduced our rate about 3.5%. It resulted in about a $150,000 savings.
Mm-hmm.
And we used that basically to offset other items that we had in the budget that we were coming up shy. And I'd be happy to send to you, Kristen, what the board voted on that night.
Yeah, I can look at it.
Yeah, but there was
tonight,
basically, so when we do the budget back in January, you may recall last year we did the same thing. A lot changes between January and July 1. A lot of staffing changes, a lot of estimates we may have about things aren't necessarily correct. And in the case of MERS, we got a June 30th gift, okay? You may recall also that as a result of the budget cuts that occurred after the first vote, there was a $434,000 cut and a $67,000 cut. We never really, the board never really sat down and identified how they would allocate that $517,000.
So when we did that as a board on August 7th, that was just.
August 7th, I basically took the bottom line number, I reallocated it based on what I was looking to be my most current projection, and moved things around so that I can still come out to the bottom number.
Right.
But it gives you a better idea going into the year as opposed to what we started with in January.
Okay, great. That's all I had. Anyone else? Any other questions? No, I'm not. Okay.
Recommend September 11th financial report to the full board.
I'll second that. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. And I apologize for skipping public comment inadvertently. So if there is any public comment, I would welcome that now. If there's any public comment for the Finance Committee meeting? Go on the third time. Not heard? Okay, we will go back to the order of the agenda. Report. We have a guest speaker tonight. Welcome, Mr. Loki. Take it away.
We're very proud of him and the excellent work and time that he's put in and working on this service. We're very pleased with the update he has to share tonight.
Great.
Sure. Since the inception of the position, which I believe was in April of last year,
Yes.
I've applied for and won $81,937 in grants. So that's applications in one. One grant was from Ion Bank for the K-2 DIVLS program, which you're probably going to be able to speak to more specifically if you have questions about it. I also got a dual credit grant, which is specifically for the high school, in which we are working with any of the local colleges to provide dual credit. For $20,000, $47,000 program supplemental grant, in which case we're buying a machine shop. In the future, we plan on putting a fourth articulated course in manufacturing back into the high school, hopefully not this school year, hopefully the next school year, we'll be putting a course. I already have the Valley Community College on board another $9,937 from the Connecticut Valley Community Foundation for a recording studio at the high school. I also did apply for an additional almost $16,000, which we did not win. One was from Toshiba for Vex Robotics, and another was from Dollar General for a pre-K creative curriculum. So we did not win those two. And the one that's biggest one that's outstanding right now is a dual tutoring grant that came out for mathematics for 6 through 9. I'm hoping we get some portion of it, but the grant that's outstanding right now, we should know by October 2nd, is for $664,188.68, which will include 13 tutors at the middle school and additional 3 tutors at the high school, paid through via the grant, as well as some administrative salaries that will come back to the
Who's
district.
that grant from? Who's offering that grant?
That is from the state of Connecticut.
Yes.
So their focus is on mathematics and trying to help out the district. So I'm hoping that we get something.
So the total grant amount that Connecticut is making available is 600,000, or is that potentially what we can get just for our schools?
The grant is about $2,500 per student that qualifies. So there was some data that we had aggregated, and Elena was very helpful in helping me aggregate the data, extremely helpful. So we were able to aggregate that data and then come to a number of students that would benefit. And then they also had a pre-sorted list of vendors that we would be able to choose from to apply for the grant. And the one that we would be looking for is a Smart Start out of Haven. There was only 2 vendors out of the lot that they gave us, there's 10 to 15 of them. There's only 2 vendors that would provide tutoring in person. And I thought it was critical that we get people in the building. We need the grant scope on that too. So we were going with them, so they were able to provide us kind of the budget for that. And then, again, there's money built into that to offset administrative salaries that you're going to bring back to overlook those programs. It's not in addition to administrative salaries, it's a way of working. So we'll see. Hopefully we get some of that. I'm actively searching. If you answer ideas or anything, please let me know.
That's actually a question I was going to have for you. Like, do you have a special email that you set up or anything for, like, grants are us, or, but because people see grants all over, whether it's through their work, whether it's, there are so many large companies that have foundations that focus on education that you can't possibly know them all, but people in the community might know them, so
Email me directly.
just email us.
Right.
So I have 4 or 5 different free kind of services that I have applied to, in which case, they feed me some of the grants. Some of them are very specific as to socioeconomic status, diversity. And we see a lot of the grants going to the cities, and we're kind of stuck in the middle. We don't have a huge tax base that the city might have, nor do we have a huge tax base that Westport have. We're stuck in the middle, but they're really catering a lot to city schools, a lot of the grants. So I'm just going to keep plugging away and get as much as we possibly get to help out the kids here.
Great. Questions for Mr. Wong?
Well, great report. Thank you. This is one of my requests. I think it's awesome that we get feedback on what's going on. Did you hear back about the 2 that you didn't get any feedback? I know it's like talking to,
No, it's just an email.
Just so we can improve on
Yeah.
it, right? It's, it'd be nice to sometimes to get what we're missing or what else we can do to kind of up our chances.
So, like with the Connecticut Valley Community Foundation, I was able to call and
Right.
speak with people. They kind of helped me lead in the right direction. I had 3 or 4 different ideas for grants and what would be kind of acceptable, what they were looking for. When it gets to be like Toshiba or Dollar General, you really can't talk to anybody. You're just going by what's online, and it goes before some board somewhere,
Right.
and they're going to make their determination.
Well, I wouldn't lose faith.
No, I'm
But
not.
that's like
I'm not going to go there.
Yeah, that's hard to work with some of those larger corporations if you don't know.
Yeah, same thing with IMA. I was able to talk to people,
Right.
which was awesome.
Right.
See what they're doing.
We're really hoping with this grant with the State Department that is geared towards middle school mathematics,
The tutor.
because the biggest gap and the biggest need, of course, is mathematics. There have been more statistics come out on the national study as well about the after COVID results, but again, it shows when you look at assessment scores statistically throughout Connecticut, you see that mathematics middle school level is among the lower scores. So it's just something, it's a big transition and the rigor, but this would really help if we could get additional tutoring to provide small groups and one-on-one. I thought you did a nice job on the grant when you talked to me about it.
So the middle school model, obviously we have a new middle school principal, so those are very brief, it was like due in 2 days, that, right after the game, so I was kind of scrambling. So if we get it, it's gonna be more of a push-in, where we're gonna take 13 tutors and push them into the classrooms, and then work with kind of the small groups of identified students. They'll be working at least with each student 3 days a week, and the grant really calls for keeping it to a 4-to-1 ratio. So we would get 13 in the middle school full-time, basically 5 days a week, on a 4-to-1 ratio, push in. And in the high school model, we would use, in lieu of study halls, we would be utilizing a tutor to help more students in mathematics at high school. It's only 9th grade, so it's 6th.
And you always know the need of algebra 1 for those students that are still having difficulty. So you really have to select Connecticut for really emphasizing that.
I mean, my question is, where are they gonna find these tutors?
So, again, yeah, they claim they have them, but SmartTouch, they've been around for a long, like 15 years, out of New Haven. So they're already providing some tutoring resources for other districts. But this could really expand the company, and they say they have personnel.
Good stuff. I do not have any more separate. Oh, where's the third question?
No, that was my question.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. I don't have any kind of chairman's report. Is there a superintendent's report this evening?
No, I just want to say that with this closing out the year and everything, Mr. Ducci and Lisa and Kathy worked very diligently. I know that the EFS report, that's the most important report that you do on the state level. And I know the intense time that we spent, because it's like the nucleus of all of our budgets and grants, and it's just so important. It's the most difficult report to do as well. So I'm glad it's finished, well on, it's great stuff.
And thank you. That's not a fun time of the year to have the, it's kind of like the end of the year, you
In
know.
the summer, right?
Exactly.
Why can't we change our year ends to be like July and August?
Well, I mean, look at, most companies are still year end, December 31st. Who the heck wants to spend December doing that stuff? So I feel like there's never a, yeah, August. Okay, thank you. Motion to adjourn? All right, Chris. That's a second. All in favor? Aye. Finance committee meeting is closed.
Okay, we're going to start the September Seymour Board of Ed regular meeting, 7:30. Please rise for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I just ask that everybody please remain standing while we take a moment of silence for the anniversary of 9/11, and then we have two more people we'd like to have a moment of silence. Thank you. First up is Dennis DeBarber, who's a longtime athletic coach. Coach, now say a few words.
Dennis mainly worked with the football team, but he was involved with all the other teams as a guest to watch them and encourage the kids. And he spent a lot of time, and he was a great man who helped the Anson High School athletes. So we're going to miss him.
Great, thank you. And then Sandy Kazo, I'd like to turn over to Mrs. Bratton for a few words.
Sandy Kazo was an art teacher that served our community for over 20 years of our students. She was a member of the Anna Lepresti Anna Lepresti team, as well as Chatfield team, serving both students at both schools. Her love for art and her passion showed through all of our students' projects, as well as through staff. She was always willing to go above and beyond and help us all on her day-to-day and even on the weekends, and it was a big loss for all of us in the school system.
All right, thank you. Okay, item 2A, we received a recognition. It's one of the top 100 high schools in Connecticut. And then item B, we have Seymour High School Sports Hall of Fame, class of 2023. And we have 6 members: Dan Paul, John C. Jack Morosky, Ernie Ray Watts, Heather Ray, Rebecca Blake, and Bill Brooks. And we have a resolution here that we would like to read. So the resolution of the Seymour Board of Education honoring the class of 2023 inductees of the Seymour High School Sports Hall of Fame. Whereas the Seymour High School Sports Hall of Fame has been established to recognize outstanding athletes, coaches, and individuals who have graduated from Seymour High or coached Seymour High School athletics. And whereas the Seymour High School Sports Hall of Fame is inducting its class of 2023 members on October 28th, 2023. And whereas the Seymour Board of Education wishes to recognize the athletic accomplishments of the class of 2023 inductees to the Seymour High School Sports Hall of Fame. And whereas the Seymour Board of Education wishes to recognize and honor the outstanding accomplishments and character of the inductees of the class of 2023 of the Seymour High School Sports Hall of Fame. And now, therefore, be it resolved that we, the members of the Seymour Board of Education, hereby congratulate and extend our very best wishes to the class of 2023 inductees of the Seymour High School Sports Hall of Fame. Be it further resolved that we, the members of the Seymour Board of Education, join the members of the Seymour High School Sports Hall of Fame Committee in recognizing and saluting the accomplishments of Richard Lewis, sports writer, statistician, and team manager, as a recipient of the 2023 Outstanding Contribution Award. It's dated at Seymour, Connecticut, and adopted by the Seymour Board of Ed on this day, the 11th of September.
Seymour Drive. I'm usually here talking to you about reading programs. Tonight, I'm actually coming as a parent of a member of the swim team, the girls' swim team. We have some donations that parents have put together, but I think if you took a trip into the area where the pool is, it's evident that it's in need of some TLC. Start blocks at the cost of like $30,000, even just an American flag so that they can have the national anthem, and just some cleaning, which we're perfectly willing to put in. And I know that we have a long way to go in terms of fundraising. We're not coming to you asking for all of it. We are trying to be mindful of the budget and where you are. But it is used for 2 out of 3 seasons between the girls and boys. So just into the next budget season, being mindful of that, that we can have some of those athletic funds directed to the pool. We've had some really successful seasons and we'd like to continue. Thank you.
Anyone else? I'm sorry.
He's with the swim team.
Oh, okay. So Ms. White, you might want to stick around for,
The donation and when he speaks, yes.
yeah. Public comment, anyone else? Going twice? Public comment, third call. All right, hearing none, moving on to the consent agenda. One item that I would like to remove is item C, or item D, sorry. Anyone else?
Item D under what number, Chris? Oh, the whole, letter D?
Yeah, there's only one.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the removal of item D.
I'll second that motion.
Motion by Ms. Harlan, second by Ms. Schnella. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, passes 8-0-0.
I abstain.
Oh, I'm sorry, 8-0-1. Item D, remove. What's that? 7-0-1, sorry. Item 5, items removed from the consent agenda. I just removed that because I think you typically remove the signatures and do that separately outside of the consent agenda. I think that has to be a separate item.
Okay, but I thought this, you didn't do this D?
No, just item D.
Oh,
Item D,
gotcha.
the formality of that. It's better to be safe since it's dealing with the bank.
Okay, so then I'll make a motion to remove Vonda Tenza and add Salvatore Bucci to the authorized signature form.
I'll second motion by Ed, second by Jim. Any questions, discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, passes 8-0-0. Item 7, discussion and possible action. We have cooperative agreement with Oxford, so Dr. Compton.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to that. Their Board of Ed met last week. I think this arrangement that we have put together with the students has worked out very well. This is the first cooperative agreement I guess we've done with Oxford in many years. This is a situation to where, based upon the recommendation and working with their Board of Ed in regards with these agreements, but this was prepared by an attorney. Our attorney has looked at it as well to protect the privacy of the students. It says student A, student B, student C. So I feel this is a good situation. It's showing a cooperative relationship between Oxford and us in regards with this. And I just think I think it's a good thing to do. It was done in the past and it wasn't approved by both boards like it's technically supposed to be with one student. But this is something that, like I said, based upon working with Dr. Boyle as well as their Director of Special Services, in the Oxford school system situation with some of these students and the confidentiality, it was the best situation. We have some coming here and we have two going there, or one going there, and then two that are coming here, three.
Okay, any questions?
And like I said, we took out any names, couldn't use names.
So we do have to take action on that.
Yes.
This is a really tough one for me. I'd love to see a cooperative agreement where we weren't having to exchange money. We were just working as a community, doing the best we can for students. Where does this come out of our budget, understanding that, I guess it looks like our per pupil is 14, calculated at 14,000 and some odd, and their per pupil is 18,000 and some odd, and so, I mean, at some point, if their students stop coming here and our student keeps going there, that's an $18,000 check we're writing. And I don't know where that's coming from.
Well, technically, in regards, it's just the difference with their per pupil amount, as you well, you know that, you understand that is better than me, because of their amount of their expenditures that they're able to do per student. I would like to move, this isn't the time, this is the beginning, but I think it would be better in the future to work towards where it would be an equal amount, an equal swap, and let go of the tuition variation. But right now, this is the best that we can do in regards based upon what their tuition is, the difference.
But again, what happens if the student from Oxford stops coming to Seymour, and then we have to pay full tuition, and I just don't know where that money's coming from.
Right, that could go either way, technically, based upon just the services and what's better. There have been some situations, I can't get into public session, but it could have led to litigation. And it's just a better win-win, based upon some of the needs of some of these kids with social and emotional issues. And that was also a student transfer from the past before I got here. And that's really the basis of some of this. We've got two of their kids that technically wants to leave Oxford, and we've got a student here that wants to leave Seymour, and another student from Seymour that's already there. So it's basically kind of like an exchange system. The disadvantage, as Mrs. Harmley has indicated, is that there is a difference in the tuition. Basically, in the wash, when you really look at it, yeah, is it some additional funds? It is, but I think this opens a door with an official agreement that we need to definitely to try to work, not just with this agreement, but with other things with them in the future. I think it's just a good way to, to try to work together.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that there can be a need for it with the special education students if one district has a program or a capability that we don't have in-house. It's the regular students that I'm a little bit puzzled by, but I understand that we're talking about kids whose school year has already started and you inherited some of this.
Yeah.
So I think we should take a closer look at it as towards the end of the school year, because I don't think that regular education kids should be just swapping.
Most of it involves, and I can't get into
Yeah, right.
personal, but it really involves social and emotional. It involves some special ed services, and that's truly what it's about in regards with, and some, like I said, overall issues with social and emotional, and some actually in regards to harassment issues. And that's as far as I can go, but I'm being very honest, and I think that's how you want me to be. I just like to get it to where it's an equal swap. Tomorrow night, Oxford has a meeting. I really plan on attending if at all possible. They've just moved into their new board office where they're now in a school. They used ours as a model. They're out of their old location, and they work very diligently this summer. But, like I said, it's just a situation. We think this is a better win-win based upon the needs of the students. And I think Dr. Boyle would support me as well. Anything you'd like to say, Dr. Boyle, because you're an expert in these areas of special services.
I'm not better able to speak
And our attorney is really supporting this as well, at least the one that does our special ed stuff.
I noticed it said through June of '24. Do we have to revisit this every year?
Yes, it's just a good thing. Like Ms. Harmley said, it's better to do that.
So my last question is, if we ever find ourselves in a position where we are taking in more students than we're paying for the school district,
You could
is
stop
that money coming back to the schools? My understanding was that it would go into the general fund when like a parent paid for their student
Tuition.
from out of town, they would go into the general fund. We really need it to come back to the school board if it's
Well,
part of a.
this actually is just money exchanged from the Board of Ed. These are not separate tuition. This is just the Board of Ed. We're exchanging 3 students. It's an exchange, but we're having to pay the difference
Right.
of their tuition per pupil amount.
Right.
That's what this is. But like I said, you need to know about it every year. We've also stepped into a situation of something that I did not know about when I came here, and we'll talk about that in executive session as well, that's involving one other student.
Okay.
But it's a good start. It really is, with working with them.
Make a motion to approve the cooperative agreement. Well, it's actually public schools for student transfer.
Say for this year.
For the year 2023-24.
I'll second.
Motion by Jay, second by Chris. Any other questions? All right, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chair abstains. Passes 801. Item 6, proactive sports contract. I know we had received this late today.
Right, Kathy Fell, would you like to come up? This didn't arrive at my office email until 3 o'clock. At that time, I was at some of the schools, was coming back wrapping up. I actually was at Bungie, I was at Chatfield today, I wasn't at the middle school. I did go down to part of the high school. Christine has sent this. There's still one area that's a little concerning. I'll let Mrs. Fed address it. It might be that you might table it. We go back to her and say, hey, we're just not going to do this. So you want to address it?
Sure. When the original contract was presented to us a month, 2 months ago at this point, there was language in there that should we cancel their services late, that there was going to be a 10% charge. And so we questioned the word late. Was that a day, 2 days, a week? What exactly did that mean? And at the time, they said 24 hours. And, the proactive said in the past, there were times when we would cancel their service at the very last minute. And personally, I can't recall a time when that happened. We did have, some cancellations because of weather, things like that, but according to them, that's not what they're talking about here. So if they're, if we're supposed to have a trainer on a Thursday, and Thursday afternoon, there's bad weather, we cancel, we won't be charged, is the way they put it. But if, we have something on a Friday, and, they show up and, the game was moved to Saturday, something like that, then we would be charged. And I do have a problem with some of that, in the sense that what happens is, we give them their schedule, and then we've asked, what days can you make it, what days can you not? And you know how the schedule works, you put something in place, but depending on weather and depending on what's going on, things do change. So Dave and I are trying to send out a weekly schedule, hey, this is what we sent you, just kind of, what we're going to look at for this week. If you take this week in particular, we have 2 events going on the 14th. We have a volleyball game home, and we also have a soccer game home. Service said to us, well, she can only come to the volleyball game because she's having a procedure done I said to her, we're gonna look elsewhere because we're not covering one event with one trainer and one event for another. We're covering our school for these training services. And, if somebody gets hurt, they gotta go to both of those places. Now, today's Monday, so I reached out to another service. If I find out on Thursday or Wednesday morning that another service can cover both events with one trainer, then I want to go with that trainer because that's what's best for Seymour. But under that contract, I worry that we would get charged for that. And that's what I
Right,
don't
so
like about it.
I think you need to table it, go back and look at it, take it out, and let the attorney look at it, right? Because it's still not the way, I think, the athletic committee, Stefan, Jay, and Ed, you're on that, and that last athletic committee was very lengthy, and there's still some issues, so.
I'd like to make a motion to table. I think also, sorry, through the chair, there's some other things in here like Wi-Fi, internet, et cetera. Are these things that they could come back and say, oh, and I don't think we were able to finish flushing those things out. If for some reason the Wi-Fi, they're not able to have access to it, are they gonna say that we're in breach of the contract, stuff like that?
Yeah.
I'm also disappointed that I know it's been almost a month, and again, they're providing us a service, and, we get it at,
Came at 3, I'm
3
sorry
o'clock,
you
right.
just got it with me this evening,
yeah,
but.
but, I'm kind of struggling with that. We've been talking about it for almost 2 months, so I would make a motion to
Of
table.
email. We
For
tried to
October.
get it quicker,
October?
What's October date?
yeah.
We should say October.
October meeting.
October.
All right, motion table by Jay. Do I have a second?
Yes, I'll second.
Second by Ed. All those in favor? Opposed, abstention, passes 9-0-0. Okay, item 6C, memorandum of understanding, school resource officer.
I'm just going to give you an update about it. We should have our memorandum of understanding completed by October. There's other surrounding districts working on and updating with the new statutory requirements. The chief of police also is doing his due diligence and looking at all of this intensely. I know there's some surrounding districts that are doing the same. It mainly deals with the school resource officer, specifically with the duties in regards where that they have to do the reporting. And we also must have certain things. First of all, this has to be posted up on the website. But the other situation is that they must report the date, time, and location of investigations, the reason for the investigation, et cetera. But there's a lot of new updates of changes. So I think it's very important to also, Mr. Stamello had brought up the situation again, making sure that we're a part of the selection process. Last time when the school resource officer was, my designee was, I couldn't be there at the time. Mr. Freud couldn't either, so Paul Lucky was the person. It was actually in the summer, and I actually was the time I went to Kentucky very quickly. But it worked out well. The chief gave some input for us to be involved with it. I think that's one of the things that you want to make sure, Mr. Stamello, that practice is put in there. We'd like to say that at least that we can observe and possibly provide input. Only the chief of police hires this person in the end, and I know they have a union contract. But there's definitely some changes, and that's why we just didn't have it ready to present tonight. So, any questions about this? Because it's involving a lot of new updates. And also, you as a board have to be informed. So we'll be having to go into executive session when it's required for certain things because of confidentiality with students. So this whole new statute involves a lot.
Any questions on this? All right, we'll take that back up in October.
Yeah.
All right, item 6D, the donation for the Seymour swim team.
Make a motion to accept the approval of computer equipment to the Seymour Public Schools based on the superintendent's recommendation, and ask that the board direct the superintendent to determine the placement of this donation.
All right, motion by Jay, second by Stefan. I believe we have some sort of information of the donations.
Well, what left of the Wildcat Swim Club is myself, Sven Rittberger. Sven Rittberger, Wildcat Swim Club, and I'm here with John Lovasolo. We're basically what's left. We had to make the hard decision when COVID, we tried to keep it going after a couple of years. We just couldn't, so we made the decision to shut it down. With that, we have money left over that we want to donate to get equipment that you guys need for the pool. We heard about that you're going to purchase new lane lines, and because we've been doing this for so long, we know all the other equipment that you really need to get it back up and running, the pool the way it should be. I do know you purchased a starter unit. We are looking to purchase this, the latest computer system they have, Gen 7 from Colorado. It'll meet up with all your work with your scoreboards and everything else. All their other equipment, they're discontinuing, so this is really the only option. With that, you've seen the coach's office. Basically, after years of just sitting in a chlorine environment, it just rusted and fell apart. What I've done is I've collected donations to replace all the file cabinets, tables, chairs, bookshelf, and we'll be going in to help clean it up and put it all back together for you. We do have to finish some legal things to shut down the swim club, so we're completely out of it, and whatever money we have left, we want to, put towards the pool itself. We do still have equipment issues that we have to figure out. We can't do that without the computer, so we need to figure out, do we have enough touch pads that work? Those run $1,100 a piece when it comes time to replace them. And along with all the cables that connect everywhere, make sure it's working again. It also requires 2 Windows computers. I've acquired one. I'm working on a second one to donate. But this is what I have right now. The other thing I want to ask you is with the donations, it's waiting 3 months to meet with you guys to approve you with donations. If there's a way that we can just say, okay, whatever I can get hold of or raise to donate for the pool and get in there, can I get your approval now and just see how I fare with that?
All donations have to be approved by the board.
I'll make my turn. I don't see why we can't give a blanket approval with gratitude to an organization that, I find this a little embarrassing, quite frankly, right? And embarrassing that we haven't kept up with the maintenance of the pool, but also how would, when you have a specialty, right? You know it needs, there's no one on our athletic committee, there's probably no administrator who has this depth of knowledge, so if we can make a motion this evening that, like I mentioned, accepts with gratitude as this organization is kind of folding down and being generous enough to give it to us, I don't see why we would have to have every in-kind donation.
And we have kids in the school system now.
Right.
And we have more coming. The Wildcat Swim Club shut down, and we've lost a huge feeder for the pool. Hopefully the town at some point can bring that back. We're just, the 2 of us, we're not equipped to do that anymore. And what we do want to see change and help you make that change faster. Like you have the starter unit with Colorado. When I order that computer, I'm going to be pushing them to get all that equipment to us yesterday. Because it needs to get done. We can get by, but we need to do better than just get by.
How about a general statement of just with the swimming pool equipment and computer, just generic definition?
So I'd like to amend my motion to read, recommend the approval of any had it right there. Any leftover materials and or supplies, or financial or monetary donations for the swim team. Just so we can, I don't know, give me a word. Just all.
Yeah.
To
we're dissolving.
encompass all of that, like this, it's in a broad general statement, but detailed enough. that
With red.
it's so much, right?
Yes, and I'll be working with Kathy and the coaches to really push and get this stuff done.
Well, I'm confused with what we're saying with this motion. If the gentleman has given us a list of stuff, why don't we just include what's in that list? And then we don't have to worry about anything.
He's saying that there will be more, and he doesn't want to have to wait.
There'll be more than the
Yes,
the bookshelf and chairs
Yeah.
and all that.
Once they get additional.
Once we legally pay for shutting down the swim club, we're hopefully gonna have more money. How much, we don't know, but right now, this is what we can do. And, I'll work with the school to get more donations as I can, talking to more people, whether it be money or items. We do work with other schools, they will be helping us get the system up and running. I do need to talk to one coach still, hopefully they have a little bit of equipment we might be able to get from them because they revamped their whole pool area. And if we can get some of that and then, to get us by in the meantime, that'd be great. And it's just anything dealing with upgrading the pool, if you can let me do it, we'll do it.
Did that just make it around? So,
This is what,
I have right now. Right, so the Gen 7 computer, the 1 or 2 computers, file cabinet, coach's desk, bookshelf, chairs, safety equipment, that's what's on the table right now. I certainly don't want to have you come back every month for small to anything, so why don't we?
Can we just make a motion to accept current and future donations from the Wildcat Swim Club and direct the superintendent to place the donation as she sees fit?
I don't have a problem with it.
I amend my motion to one, Mr. Harmon.
My second. Okay, so we will accept the donations and probably anything else that comes your way while that club
With
unfortunately gets
With
dissolved.
gratitude,
With
that's right,
gratitude.
yes.
Thank you.
We appreciate it so much. I want to say also a special thank you to First Select Woman Anne Marie Dugonis and all of her efforts as well, and working with you, and also with wanting to do and support further renovation with this pool and so forth. I will tell you, as a school district and as a Board of Ed, they have done some things. I mean, Mr. Bucci, I don't know exactly, we have also with changing over with the chemicals, that was about, what, $18,000, 20? Swimming pool with converting, the amount of money that the board, that we worked in making it better. Plus, we also, with the containers, we're talking about the swimming pool, what the board has done in regards to helping with the pool right now. We had to do an emergency thing.
Yes, up until this past year, the swimming pool was chlorinated using a liquid material that required injection with CO tanks. It was a very antiquated system. It was very difficult to get the chlorine to dissipate in the water. It required quite a bit of testing on a regular basis to make sure the water was safe. This past year, we converted over to a powered
So we have been trying, we realize the magnitude of what we're dealing with. And thank you so much.
All right. Ed?
No, I'm fine.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Anything else?
Would anyone like me to repeat the motion? Would you like me to repeat the motion? Yeah, okay. Make a motion to accept with gratitude current and future donations from the Wildcat Swim Club and direct the superintendent to place each donation as she sees fit.
Anything else? Hearing none, all those in favor? Opposed, abstentions, passes 9-0-0. Item 6E is the additional math teacher at the middle school, based on the increase in enrollment. Dr. Compton?
Yes, I had our new principal put together the master schedule and the rationale. Ms. Rourke, would you like to say anything based upon the numbers? It's a situation to where we have had some enrollment increase here at the middle school, and with the scheduling situation and to be able to have a better equitable amount of students in the classrooms, as well as to really do a better focus on math. It is the greatest area of need, of course, again. It's just very, very needed. So would you like to say a few comments? You did a nice job preparing this.
Thank you. So, simply put, coming in, learning a lot about the school. One of the first things that I did was look at the schedule, and something that stuck out to me initially was roster size. In addition to that, we had a very large number of students enroll, all within the first couple of weeks of school. I would say that our population is approaching 480. There have been easily 20 students who have come to Seymour Middle School as new students this fall. And if you look at the allocation that the building had in terms of math resources, it was requiring the pulling of teachers from off grade level to cover sections in the 7th grade. The result is having a schedule that's not balanced, and what will fix it is another math teacher. Seymour Middle School would benefit from not only that teacher, but it would also benefit from a social studies teacher. Finding out the history of the building, there have been a couple of reductions in FTEs over the past couple of years. I can make the schedule work, and being creative, we can make the schedule work without having to add 2 teachers. We can make it work with the addition of 1. The balance right now in class rosters across the core content teaching areas, so that's social studies, science, math, language arts, 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade ranges drastically, with some classes having as few as 8 students in it, 7 students in it, to other classes having as many as 29 and 30. Now, with the addition of that 1 teacher, it will help me to stabilize the entire schedule, and those numbers will go to, in 6th grade, 21 to 23 per academic class, in 7th grade, 20 to 22, and in 8th grade, 18 to 20. And those are optimal signs, and our students deserve it, and so do our teachers.
Well, again, the increase of the number of students, because we were having 460 and it's up to 480 now. And we did cut a teacher. So it just, with the amount of increases, part of it.
It wasn't a special education teacher and we moved them into
Social studies position, or refresh my memory?
It actually was the social studies teacher that we cut, that was in the 6th grade, that moved to another state. And the situation being, this person has been doing dual with special ed and social studies.
That's right. We were gonna move a special ed, we were gonna have that special ed teacher teach the social studies
They were
once that
doing
social
dual.
studies teacher had left.
They were doing some dual social studies classes. But the problem is, with the increase in enrollment, it just put us over the edge in regards with the number of math students and stuff in the classes, with the increase.
So if I'm reading this correctly, and this is wonderful information, the blue team, 7th grade blue team currently has no full-time math teacher.
Correct.
We didn't know that going into the school year? I'm not asking that, it's not a question for you, by any stretch of the imagination. Dr. Compton, we didn't know.
The plan that was in place was to be able to cover the amount of student need with the existing resources.
have advanced classes, advanced math classes, scattered throughout a grade level schedule. Students have to take that class. Then in addition to that, you have special education scattered throughout. Certain students have to take that class. So when the students start to populate during the scheduling process, if they have to be in a specific class at a specific time, that's how you wind up with a class of 29, 30 people.
And the schedule was not truly completed until towards the end of July. That was part of the problem, and then with the influx of students. So that's.
So with the addition of this teacher, we could balance it. We could balance it, it could be fixed.
So according to this plan, under the new plan, who's teaching social studies for the red team? Are those teachers from other grade levels?
So the plan would be to keep the social studies assignments in place, but we would add 2 sections. Right now, if you look at 7th grade needs 8 sections of social studies. It only has 6 right now. One teacher certified in social studies from 6th grade will move to teach a 7th grade section. A teacher from 8th grade who's certified in social studies will move to teach a section in 7th grade as well. And their overall teaching load will be adjusted to be within contract.
Yeah, I have a lot. So the first thing is, we do not need to make a motion to create a mathematics teacher position. We already have teaching positions, we have math teaching positions. This is actually more of a budget thing, right? So it really should be a request to be transferring funds from one of our line items to the certified educator line item. We can talk about that as a finance committee if we want to kind of instate some guidelines for transfers, which is something we have previously not done in the past. So I wanted to make that clear. We do not need to make a motion on this because we're not creating a new defined position. The second thing is just an observation, and we've talked as a district about, do we need to move away from the team structure? And this, to me, there might be amazing philosophical reasons to do it, but when we're talking about a swing of 40 students between one grade to another, I mean, we just can't operate like this. We have a hard enough time trying to balance Bungay School and Chatfield or Presti School, and here we try to take 3 grades and almost make them into 6 different pods. Like, we just don't, we need more flexibility than that. It's,
Well, that's an
so-
excellent point. There's a way where you can have larger team, a team concept. Also, next year, we would like to have the high school and the middle school on the same schedule, so that if shared faculty would have to be, that's a possibility as well. But we really want the same schedule worked out. It's difficult based upon with some of the team approach. There's a way to do team without this specific, all of these teams.
Would
And you
it, to
can do more.
piggyback off that, wouldn't it be more beneficial to have subject-based team leaders versus?
Well, that's going more towards departmental style, like the high school. We've talked about some of the different examples that we can do. It's just a situation with this, the scheduling. It's been a work in progress, but also I think just in the shifting with math, because you got to make sure that you're addressing the needs of our special needs children, but also with our children that for the advanced math with Algebra 1 and pre-algebra as well. And so when you really looked at it with the whole balance, and the increase of kids made a difference as well. So technically, you don't always come and ask, oh, can we have another teacher if it's based on an enrollment, and that's what you're saying. But in my situation, yeah, it's also a budgetary situation. We did cut a teacher out of the middle school. We tried our best in the budget in trying to figure out what cuts. But here, due to the increase a little bit, which is a good thing, based upon whatever, and we did our due diligence, and this is something that's going to benefit everybody.
So just a question too for you. I'm
Yeah.
just noticing 6th and 7th grade are about 30 more students than 8th grade. What is our 5th grade enrollment looking like for next year? Are
So,
we,
if you don't mind,
Yeah.
I looked at the projections that I was able to find. I'm still finding information. And so a couple of quick thoughts. I understand the conversation about more of a traditional junior high school model. Something that I found in the school is that there's a tremendous amount of pride in the school team structure. The hallways are painted the colors of the teams. The kids have a tremendous amount of pride, and so do the teaching staff. And we have the numbers right now to sustain that model. If you look at these numbers, whether we have junior high school model or whether we have a team model, you still need the same number of sections per content area, and adding the teacher will allow us to accomplish that. Adding the teacher at this point too is it wouldn't be a one-time investment because we would need that teacher at least for the next 3 years out, number-wise. I don't know what comes in after that, but the numbers that I looked at would warrant for there to be the addition of a math teacher.
It's not a secret that I'm not a fan of attrition-based budgeting, and I just want to say that this is an example. I think as we look to build next year's budget and make those presentations, we really have to look at those projections and make decisions around where the needs are. I think if there's going to be a schedule change, that should come to us sooner rather than later, because that's going to have budget impacts that we need to be able to communicate and to plan for.
As we started out the year and the influx of the students that were coming in, and a lot of them were sixth graders. That's what you all have to understand. I mean, this was what the cards we were dealt with and doing the best that we can. But, you know, the budget situation, we're not taking no more teachers down. Like, we just can't keep doing this. I can't.
One more question through the chair. What is our, I mean, this is gonna, no one likes change, right? So this is gonna cause some students to be moved, right, to different classes. So I have full faith that there's a great communication plan in there for the parents and the students as well. My question is actually, have we thought about what we do with the end of the marking quarter? Can we shift it around a little bit in the middle school? So, because by the time all this happens, we're like 2 weeks in.
So I think what would make the most sense would be to do an end of the quarter switch, let the students
Okay.
take the classes, and realistically,
You don't have
we're
enough
going to
teacher in.
post this position, it's a math position, it's
Yep.
not going to be an easy position to fill. Math is one of the more difficult subjects. It's going to be posted as a 4-8 or 7-12 certification. You might have to consider a 1-6 or a K-6 possibility, but that's not optimal. We'd rather have a secondary math teacher who's trained in teaching math as a subject area expert. But I can't see the process being any less than a month because we got to find someone, and then we have to go through the appointment and contract signing
I
process.
kind of forgot about that part.
And if we wind up with somebody great from another district, there's going to be a 30-day hold as well.
Yeah.
So this will give our counseling department, and Ms. Reynolds and myself, a chance to look at the rosters, balance things out. Every parent of every student who's impacted by this will get a phone call. Every student who's impacted will be met. And at the end of the day, my message is going to be simple, that while this is not optimal in the big picture, in the scope of your child's education, it's much better for your child to be in a class where the sizes are manageable, and services can be provided to every student, and teachers are not teaching classes with 30 kids in them. Just or a class with 7 students in them, which that's not good for the student either.
Right.
So and for the greater good, this is a worthwhile endeavor, though not what I would prefer to do, at this stage of the school year, but something that I think is necessary for the students.
And, well, thanks for bringing this.
We wanted you
with
to see all
actual
the
data.
detail.
My only question and concern is that making sure that the math sections, they're all kind of trending with the same subject material, so that if we do slide somebody in, one class isn't a week and a half ahead and we're mixing the kids around. I mean, I think that's common sense.
Continuity.
You had something?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I wasn't sure if you were done. First of all, thank you for bringing this to us. I understand that, specifically, we don't need a motion to approve the teacher, but I think one of the benefits of having new eyes in a school are things like this. So while it might not be your, first like, oh, here, I'm new, can I have another teacher, please? I think that you should recognize you at least have my support for these decisions and these recommendations, and let us make that decision. But the first step is we have to understand what the need is, and I think this data that you presented tonight was very helpful, and I'm in full support.
So what are the next steps, Dr. Thompson? We post and.
We'll post.
And then, as far as where it comes from in the budget, I'm guessing you'll make a
We know.
recommendation?
And we can
We'll go
probably
back to the
wait
finance
until the hire is made, right? Because we won't know how much money it is.
That's right.
Until,
Yeah,
We
and
do
what
the
the
hire.
exact salary,
Yeah.
right.
okay.
We'll share with the finance committee and specifically all of where it's coming from, know where it's coming from.
True story.
All right, anything else on that? All right, thank you, Mr. O'Rourke.
Thank you.
Next up, item F, the Director of Guidance Coordinator.
Yes, let me explain about both of those. These are positions, they're not positions, or they're really changing a title and looking at an appendix area. This used to be in existence many years at Seymour High School. I went back to the archives and I found back in 2008. Did my homework, also worked with Mr. Freud. Then I went to the counseling department and said, hey, I found this in the archives. There was a lot of discussion in regards right now with being without an assistant principal. We did the approach with the athletics right now with the athletic position and the other assistant athletic director. I worked diligently with the administrators union and specifically with the high school and trying to see what was their biggest need, as we call it, a work in progress. I think that's the exact words we say, right, Mr. Lucky and Mr. Freud? We also ran this by the attorneys, both our board attorney and the union attorney. That's how transparent I am. You know, I want to do what's best for the kids, what's best for the administration, what's best for the school district. Based upon looking at the greatest needs, specifically one area here is with this lady picking back up her old title as a coordinator, then that puts her in a position to where that she can do some observations with the counseling department. She's basically the director of counseling. She cannot do an official evaluation in the end. That's Mr. Freud's assignment. But this person can assist with that. This lady does a lot. She does assessments. She does a lot of responsibilities. So this was the best win-win in regards with this. With the appendix, if you'll notice, we did a little mini job description and also created basically a new job description. What does the director of guidance do? But when you go to Appendix 1 on page 58 of the teacher's contract, when she deals with serving as a coordinator, it's $3,280. And she would be basically coordinating that whole counseling wing, and also which includes the guidance counselors as well as 2 social workers. This is a win-win in helping, because in evaluations now, with not having that assistant principal, Mrs. Feige has been assigned to do all the English teachers in that department, which she has a language arts consultant, so she can do that. Dr. Boyle was doing special ed teachers at the middle school, and he is now doing special ed teachers at the high school. Then Mr. Freud would pick up doing the PE teachers. I hate to be so open, but you need to understand why. And the public, people need to know this is done in other places. Other places also do department chairs. We didn't have time for that, not sure what the best game plan was, and we didn't create the director of athletics and all of this till after there was a transfer, okay? And it was a transfer in which that person wanted, yes.
Sorry, through the chair, my only concern, I support this, my only concern is sometimes in the posting, I think we should be consistent with the contract language.
Yes.
That says coordinator versus sometimes in the posting it says director.
Okay.
You know, I think because it's specified in the contract as coordinator.
Coordinator.
Previously, I believe, I think you highlighted to it, the director of counseling was a separate position at one point under
Yes.
the administrators.
It was.
So I just think we should be,
We'll call it coordinator.
yeah,
Thank
consistent.
you. Yeah,
just
and that will
not
correspond
committing
with this.
So this is not a new position to create?
No, it's just
still-
adding to her
Well, we're just
responsibilities.
utilizing, sorry.
Yeah.
We're utilizing the contract language.
Yes,
of the
it's on
positions
page
that's there.
58. Yeah, that's where it's coming from.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But that's
Okay.
not an appendix position now, so we would have to
That,
create
yes,
that as an
you would have to
appendix.
create that, and that is to take the load. Mr. Freud, Mr. Lucky?
Coordinator it's in the teacher's contract.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what they found.
But is it in the appendix?
But if you look, the way you.
No,
if you
no,
have
it's
it-
not in
Is it an appendix E position? Is that what you're asking?
Right.
That I don't know.
But I think through the chair, according to the language, it's not necessary, it's just as,
Yeah,
it's its own, I can't see the title, but there's a,
I'll pass it down, yeah. It's a special appendix I.
there you go, appendix number.
Yes.
So it's,
It's already,
it's
Okay.
separate from that.
it was like an addendum appendix that was added.
That they had added.
I-
Kristen, do you
I'm
remember?
not seeing it, I'm not seeing where we're getting a title from.
Is that the
Content area,
coordinators? Yeah,
content area
areas,
coordinator?
yes.
I don't, is that what a guidance falls under, content coordinator?
Yeah, that's what they had used in the past when she was a coordinator.
Quite frankly, I thought we always had it, I thought we still had the guidance department, so those show you
You
what I know.
did back in the day.
I agree with Jay that I think we have to be very clear
Yeah.
that there is a director of guidance, and that's an administrative position. That was eliminated along with many other administrative positions. The coordinator, it's a teacher leader position.
All right.
But I would like to see that
Yeah,
position.
sorry. Mr. Freund, did you have something else?
I mean, it's okay. A little bit of the history here. The person in question was hired as the not department chair or the coordinator. She was hired as the head of guidance. And when they compensated her at a rate equal to the role where they supervise the teachers. But they never, the superintendent at the time never wanted them to supervise the teachers. They wanted the administrators to supervise the school counselors, because there was enough administration in the building. She was getting compensated at a value, if you look at the coordinator position, which is where she was getting compensated for, it was less than a department chair. So during the last administration in central office, they changed her role from coordinator to department chair, and she got a few extra dollars. But right now, if we're moving to have her evaluate the people in her department.
Observe, do
The only way
observations.
we could do it is by implementing that aspect of the contract, which is the coordinating position,
Right.
adding it to her responsibility.
And I think the salary is based on the amount of teachers / counselors that,
They all fall under teacher.
Yeah.
I think that's just a piece of. the
And we
appendix I.
prepared a nice job description with it as well. So, and that's included in the attachment, so.
So we do have a head of guidance. We do have a head of guidance. We're giving that same role, I don't want to say person,
Yeah, as a coordinator, call it.
Additional responsibility.
Just additional responsibility. She's not a director, she's coordinator, and based upon the appendix I of the contract.
Excuse me, through the chair,
Yeah.
if I may. I think, you guys, I hate to say this, but you muddied my waters a little bit there with the department head piece and/or the coordinator piece. So I think I would like to see a little bit more research or a little bit more of the two. From my understanding now, what you're saying is this person would hold that title and this title. Is that
Yeah.
correct? Yeah. So, okay.
So-
We worked very hard on this.
Right, I have the contract here. You're just getting the bottom
Yeah, that's
piece
just
of
the
the.
last part of it.
But this is in the
It
contract.
combines them, it shows the responsibilities, and it's a coordinator and a department chair.
well, I mean. That's not the same thing.
No, that's just the second piece of it.
A lot of high schools, they do that.
What, I'm really confused.
Well, the real purpose.
Let me just ask a clarifying question.
okay.
So we have a person who right now, their title is head of guidance. They are a guidance counselor, they have a partial load. What we're doing right now is we are being asked to add an evaluation component, but it's not really an evaluation component because they can't do a formal evaluation, but they can assist in the observational
Yes.
component of evaluations. So we're expanding the role to include that, and that means we're giving a coordinator title on top of it, and we're going to give some more money on top of it. Does it require more time?
Yes, it does. In regards, in true honesty, it's really, like you said, it's no longer a director or a head counselor. It's technically, it was the department chair. So technically, I guess, yeah, that's a title. It wasn't no longer the director of guidance, but the person's already doing assessments. They're doing a lot of things. She takes care of all the school's assessments, whether it's AP, Smarter Balance with the science. She does a lot of things. So this is a way to supplement by doing additional observations and additional stuff. Because, like I said, some high schools do this, and it works.
But the only thing we're changing is we're adding an observational component to assist with the evaluation of guidance counselors. Is that right?
Yes.
Everything else is exactly the same.
Yes, well, with additional duties. Mr. Ford, would you like to help out? Because technically, she does a lot of, also master scheduling. I forgot to talk about that. That's a
But
big.
is that part of the head of guidance
No,
description?
yeah, it wasn't done before. In all due fairness, honestly, scheduling should be done in the counseling department, but over the years at Seymour, it changed and it went to an assistant principal's responsibility. The master schedule will be put back under her umbrella, which a lot of counselors do. They did in my former districts. I'm sorry, that's what many of them do. So that was another responsibility besides doing observations. And I'm sorry about that, I forgot about it. I should have mentioned that. And that's important, because that's a large area. Yeah.
Yes, with the elimination of Mr. Stacy's position, his responsibilities beyond athletics, because the athletics has been taken care of, has to be redistributed. Redistribution is going to where they would naturally fit. For example, in most high schools, if not all of the high schools in the state of Connecticut, the scheduling of the building is done through the principal and the school counseling department. Our previous administration thought it was wise to give it to one person. The problem with that is you lose internal capacity to cover situations when that one person might be ill or not available. So we're really moving our school to what would be considered a typical high school configuration. Up until now, we've been atypical.
And you've also agreed to also assist with the master scheduling piece.
So
Yeah.
the previous superintendent would not allow me to have voice in the development of the schedule. It would not allow me to have an opportunity to work in Power School, nor the school counselors. They created an atypical situation by making one person responsible. That role, I believe, damaged two administrators. It should be distributed amongst the entire school counseling department, overseen by the head of the department, and the build of the schedule should be overseen by the principal. We're just going to what is wrong.
But that is additional duty with the man. But but it should have been a part of it.
I agree with you 100%, 100%. But I feel like I don't know, can't we just get a clean definition of what the head of guidance or whatever the position should be called and establish a salary for it? I'm getting within the teacher contract. Because I feel like we're we're bolting things on, and I understand that we're trying to redistribute some things that the halftime assistant principal did, but we've also talked about, part of the reason we eliminated that position was because that was a model that's nowhere else to be found, having, you know, 2.5 assistant principals at a high school of our size. But what I'm not a fan of is just taking all these things and bolting them somewhere else. It's like add-ons, just.
So when you cut us down to, and one assistant, one principal, every high school that I'm aware of in the state of Connecticut that has that model, the teacher chairs of each of the departments do the observations.
Department heads.
So what you
So
did
we don't do that.
What happened was, we lost an assistant principal, but there was no consideration given into the added workload of the teacher evaluation. So we took a step going to what is considered normal without taking all the other things, taking into consideration all of the other things.
I hear that. I do.
This is a step, first step, to eventually transition the observations of our teachers to the department chairs. You know, hopefully next year we can do that, because that requires teachers to have a reduced teaching load of 4 classes, so they go from 5 classes to 4
Whoever the
classes
department chairs
to
are.
get their observations in. That'll put us on equal step with everyone else. Right now, we're not in that balance.
And this particular position, by just adding the coordinator, because she's already a department chair, let's make that clear, and that's part of the teacher's contract, and would also be a coordinator. And I'm being very open, very honest, and we did the combined with what the current job description is. And this is the way right now with evaluations, because we don't have department heads.
Going with that,
Yeah.
the teacher's contract, the only teacher position that can evaluate are the coordinators.
And
So
that's
you're really
probably-
adding that to that person's responsibilities. Because if that person is going to now observe the school counselors and provide feedback to me to write them up,
I'm having a really big problem with language and titles because I don't know what's being used synonymously and what's an actual distinct role. I don't know what the difference is between a department chair, a department head, a coordinator, and that's fine. I mean, that's no one's fault. It's just I can't tell. So are we saying that we have department chairs for our content areas at the high school, but those department chairs do not do observations?
correct.
That's
They
correct.
never have?
They never have.
Okay. And per the teacher's contract, if we want to add the observational component on that, it's now called a coordinator position.
Correct.
Okay, well, let's fix the contract next time we do it, because it's really complicated. All I know is that my mom was a math teacher my whole life, and she absolutely was evaluated and observed by her department chair because she sweat about it every time it had to happen. And that was the first thing before she was observed by a principal and her assistant principal. So, yeah.
You're absolutely correct.
And
So
it's
the-
done in a lot of high schools,
So
but
the
this right
guidance
now.
counselor now would be counselor, I'm sorry,
She's not, we're not-
coordinator and department chair.
Yes, that's exactly.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
I would propose that this go to the liaison committee where we can, in a small group, maybe have a presentation for Mr. Froy. We can look at the contract. We can get some guidance
Maybe an MOA.
and bring it back. Because as, it's my understanding, this board has not eliminated an assistant principal position. It's just vacant.
Correct.
So I think before we go changing everything else, we need a better handle on what we have and what we need. And I'd like to hear more at the committee level, and then we can bring it to the board.
You're welcome to do that. It's just required a lot of work. We've looked this contract inside out. I've looked at administrator's contract inside out. I've tried to find a way to support. This was a good solution. It's in the contract. We can have a coordinator. It's Appendix I. We can also have a department chair. It's in the contract. This was attorney-proofed by both attorneys. We can go back and take it back to the liaison committee and make sure that you feel like the language also discussed after this, that we can have an MOU, you know, with any of these, that there's any kind of added. But I've tried to be so transparent. I've tried to find a solution.
Through the chair, I think the only
Yeah.
confusion is that idea that, and again, I take some ownership of the coordinator/chair piece, or I think that there was some confusion there, and I think that's what
Yeah,
muddied
and
the
it is
waters.
both.
And I don't think we're used to the coordinator piece as much as we are
Right,
here
this
to the
is,
chair
this
piece.
is new, it's not been around for
Right.
many years.
So I think we're just,
Only used once, I think.
and
And it's a lot, because it's confusing when you go through that teacher's contract.
when was the, through the chair, when was the last time, when you said it was only used once, can you?
2008, she said.
No, the coordinator piece in the
Back,
contract.
Coordinator position has been in the contract since the early 2000s.
it was used though, Mr. Floyd, what, back,
It
she
used,
was,
but
she
the
did
person
use it.
was not asked to do any observations, so they basically had a position that they weren't fulfilling the job function because the previous district administration didn't want them fulfilling that job set function.
Okay.
Right. You have different administrators, different superintendents, different philosophies, okay?
As one idea, can we maybe approve what's being asked of us tonight? How long does this run? This is just for the school year, right?
Yes. Well,
And
we
then-
hope to continue.
Yes, absolutely, but we could approve this for the school year, and in the meantime, then the liaison committee can work on language and just kind of getting a head around it.
I mean, if
I can see
these,
Kristen's
if,
face, she's not a big fan of that.
if these are two positions that are in the contract, we don't have to take action on this.
It's money again.
It's money. You
I
need
mean,
to,
and theoretically, we don't have to approve the money either, but this is all about transparent communication,
it
which is
is, and
appreciated.
I don't have the authority to appoint.
Well, we don't have a motion, so whatever.
What do you think, Kristen? You know more about contracts as a committee chair?
I'm struggling, and I would want to hear more about the legal, my understanding is that, you know, the evaluation are done by administrators, and that differentiates a teacher contract position from an administrator. If there are, I don't know well enough about teacher leaders doing observation and what the evaluation plan in Seymour says. So that's another piece of the presentation that I would like to see at committee. I think there's some great ideas. I think scheduling is going to be greatly improved by this. So I'm not opposed, and I think you have the authority to have, you know, whoever do scheduling that you appoint to do scheduling. I just want to make sure that what we're doing within the contract is not creating an issue about who's doing, teacher leaders doing evaluations. That's the piece that I'm
Right.
less comfortable with.
We did, like I said, we sent it to both attorneys.
The aspect, they do the teacher observations, their feedback, collaboration with the building administrator does their end of the year kind of final evaluation. And they're involved in establishing the goals with the administrator. So all those aspects I would be involved in. I would be working with that person as well as the year. Their role is to watch them and observe them on a daily basis doing their job functions. More important to me, the status of their ability to function in the position. And that information is going to be used to write them up. So the evaluation is really being done by an administrator. It's the observational component of the evaluation that they would be participating.
What's the downside of waiting?
Well, we're just trying to get some
Well,
stuff in place.
The teachers, the beginning of the year paperwork has to be done by the end of October. School improvement plans, so these are all influenced by whoever that leader is. So there's things that are timely that have to get done. Certainly by the end of October, it absolutely have to happen.
We could put this on the October agenda if that's what you prefer. And Floyd can give his opinion because I sent it to him as well. Sent it to both attorneys.
If
Yeah.
we've had attorneys approve this, the superintendent thinks it's a good idea, the building principal thinks it's a good idea, I would be very against tabling this or moving it to October. I agree with you, Kristen, that we should get together as a liaison committee and look through it, but it seems very unnecessary to move this along any further.
Dollar?
I'll make a motion to reinstate the position of Director of Guidance Coordinator.
Well, second, coordinator guidance.
Should by Stefan, second by.
That we're creating administrative position. If
No,
you will.
we can't say
I don't know
director,
I don't know
just
what
say
the right motion
coordinator.
is. I don't
Okay,
think that is the right motion, but.
what's the exact
director.
title?
The coordinator, yeah. Because I messed up when I put director there, Stefan. It's supposed to just be
So I
coordinator.
already had a
It's
guidance.
called
though.
coordinator and department chair.
Coordinator department chair.
She's currently the department chair, so the thing is, would be a coordinator position on top of that.
Yeah, because this title says here, coordinator and department chair of school council.
Combination of the existing department chair with the addition of the coordinator position.
Right. The word we want to take out is director of
Right,
guidance.
yes, that has
That's
to
what
come
we
in,
want to get
because
out.
that gets into
Do we have to
administrative.
reinstate this position? Is that our job to do?
Do we have to reinstate it is a good question.
No,
No, just.
we don't.
No.
It's almost just like the middle school math teacher. It's more a budget thing than anything else.
I would throw in a motion.
Yeah. Could I ask, do we know what the dollar impact is for this school year?
It's on appendix.
I think it was 2,300. 3,200, sorry.
3,200. So, yeah, I mean, I'm with you, everything that you said, like, this is a, revisit it, talk about it as liaison, see if there's
To do an
memorandum of
MOU,
understanding.
because I talked to the union president, we need
And
to.
it could also, come back to us, because
We will.
I'm thinking it should probably be more than a 10-month position, but that's a story for another day.
And when is the next liaison meeting?
Now we have an agenda, we can schedule it.
In reference to the 10-month position, department chairs, we could call in for X number of days over the summer, depending upon need, and that's also in the contract.
Excellent.
Okay, so we'll not take any action on this.
We'll just stagger, and then we'll send, again, with the, about an MOU with both.
We can meet quickly.
Yeah.
All right, so
I've missed the committee.
Yes.
We've had so few times this
That's
year.
the thing, she's just looking for a reason to get together again.
all right, so item 6G sounds like this is another part to getting to normalcy.
I make a motion to approve the
This is
creation.
brand new, there's nothing in the contract that alludes to an attendance officer.
I make a
Okay.
motion to approve the creation of 5 teacher attendance officers for Seymour High School.
I'll second.
All right, motion by Jay, second by Ed, any discussion?
Can somebody please explain quickly what this is to me?
And the reason
Quickly.
for the need?
Dr. Collison?
The reason for the need, Paul, you want to come over here and give a little bit of data? Now, don't read all of it. I told him today sounded like artificial intelligence.
Sounded like artificial intelligence.
Okay.
Unfortunately, and these numbers are going to seem large, but I can put it in context for you. Unfortunately, last year, there was 3,762 instances of tardy to school. Another 2,204 instances of tardy to class. So it's 5,906, you really just call it 6,000 instances. When you start extrapolating time and how to address these things, it becomes very, very unwieldy. If I take a look at just the secretary, for example, to call up all of those instances, if it takes her 30 seconds to get on the phone and call, they got to get out of class, that's 50 hours worth. If the secretary also has to look up the kid's schedule, right? That's another 30 seconds, it's another 50 hours
I'm
potentially.
sorry, to do what, Mr. Bugby? Call, you're talking about a secretary calling a kid, but I'm not understanding for what?
We're like
To
tardy and
address the tardiness.
if
So
they're
I'm trying to
attendance.
give you all the data, but maybe it'll be overwhelming.
It's not the data, I don't know the process of what happens if you're late to class or late to school,
Right.
So the process is supposed to be that they're being called up to see an administrator. So I'm
Thank you.
trying to
That's
get
the- I
get
think
you
that's
through
the
the whole
pitch.
process, so you kind of understand the timeframes that are happening. So when you take a look at this, we're going to call it 6,000 instances last year. If I was to talk to those kids for 3 minutes each, you're talking 300 hours throughout the school year to talk to them. If I spend 5 minutes, you're talking 500 hours. If I spend 10 minutes, you're talking 1,000 plus hours. When you have a typical school year, right, we go to school for 6.5 hours. The kids are actually in session. Obviously, our days are longer as adults. But that only results in about 1,200 hours total. So if I was to address every instance and spend 10 minutes with a kid, I'd spend every day, every waking moment in the building while kids are in the building, just addressing tardy
Can I
starts.
just ask a clarifying question? So all this data is assuming that every instance is a different kid?
No,
Okay.
every instance is addressed.
But, so one kid could have, of those 10,000, 12,000 instances, one kid could have 1,000 of them.
Maybe, but it's
No,
You
I'm just
can't
trying
do
to
it
put
all
it
at
in
once.
context.
So
No,
it's
I'm
day
just
one,
trying to
you get
put it in
addressed day 2, day
context, that's it. I'm an engineer, I love data, I just apologize in advance, but thank you.
So when you're asking, can a kid have that many?
No, I was being facetious.
They
but
can
my
actually have
point is-
1,274
There you go.
possibilities of being tardy.
Okay, I was close.
I mean, do you want to go through everything before we bombard you with questions?
No, you can ask the question.
Okay, go ahead.
I seem to recall last year you presenting a plan to address the tardies. I remember some conversations, maybe it was 2 years ago, around kids arriving late to school.
Absolutely.
So has that plan been effective, and are those numbers including pre and post the plan that you implemented?
So what ended up happening last year is we did have some teachers who were going for the 492s who were willing to give us a little bit of help. They became overwhelmed within 2 weeks with the tardy to schools, and then it reverted back to myself and Mr. DeStazy, who has had 200 out of the 600 kids on his disciplinary. So the 2,204, I believe, is much smaller if we didn't have that teacher help last year. What we're looking to do this year, with Mr. Stacey gone and the 200 kids that he was responsible for, we're looking to bring on some more teachers who have their 092 certification, which is the administrative certification. We're fortunate to have 11 of them at the high school, actually. And so we always talk about bringing up administrators internally and giving them experiences. This is a good way to give them experiences, in which case, in lieu, if you'll see in the description, in lieu of their, during the day, they would be able to spend 3 out of every 4 days for their one time block that they would normally have a duty. They would be doing this and addressing both tardy to school and tardy to class.
Plus they do after-school detention.
What's that duty that they won't be doing now because they'll be doing this?
Typically, it's either a bathroom monitoring duty, there might be one study hall that will have to combine, or it could be a lunch duty. We have staffing that we may be able to combine as far as study halls go, or make this happen.
But through the chair, I mean, I appreciate that question, but at the same time, this is something that could directly impact student performance, which is.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you, Jay.
I'm sorry. I said this is something that could directly impact student performance, and I would love to see something like that be a duty versus, I mean, obviously there's a stipend piece, versus sitting at the bathroom where you may not have any interaction with the student. So, I'm just using that as that.
Weren't going to get done because they were doing this.
No, I understand, but I'm just trying to put that in perspective too, as someone who has, sits at a desk sometimes for hall duty and sees nobody the whole time. So, I mean, this is, I think, a great capacity building position.
And to have smaller groups and each of them focusing on a certain group, and also chronic absenteeism.
I'm trying to be measured, because I love our high school. If there was a detention every Wednesday, or every Tuesday, or maybe both, and it was consistent that you are late 3 times, you go to detention. We've never done that. We've never done that. And even when we try and we think we do, well then detention doesn't happen that day. And oh, this teacher doesn't really take attendance at detention, so it doesn't really matter if I go, but oh, this teacher does, so I'll go to that. I just feel like we're over-engineering this before we even know if it's continuing to be a really big problem this year. I know it's been a problem in years past coming out of COVID.
Yeah, I mean, on the surface, to me, it seems kind of insane that we're having a student go talk to an administrator every time that they are late to a class. And I try in all facets of life to not be the person who says back in my day, but...
Thank you for doing it.
But in my day, which isn't that long ago, we did have detentions at times. Sometimes there was detentions, and then the policy would go away, and then really nothing would happen. I don't think nothing is the right answer, but it feels like a waste of our administrators' time to be having a conversation of even 30 seconds with probably the same kids over and over again, where there's no reward or consequence or really anything other than a little bit of FaceTime, which is nice, but it seems like a waste of time to me.
But I think if they could tie it and also tie it to detention and really put some teeth into it and have those 5 that could focus, it could help. And also, we need to focus on chronic absenteeism. It's a problem in Connecticut and all over the country. And it's down even with the little kids.
Which is very different than being late to class because you
Yes.
like to talk to your girlfriend in the hallway.
Yeah.
Well, also too,
That's true.
detentions would start to inconvenience parents. And
Mhm.
once you start to inconvenience parents,
Yeah.
your children's behaviors change. At least I know mine do. Positive. Because, you know, I know they get tired of hearing Mr. Lucky, you were late, you were late, you were late, but maybe after 5 of those late to classes, mom and dad have to pick up that freshman, sophomore, half the juniors from school, and things might, I don't know. I know you also did the electronic hall pass, has that helped?
It's actually worked extremely well.
So one of the things we did also is we put together kind of a grid of consequences, which includes loss of privileges if you have like 15, 20, 30 tardies, and we presented that to some of the students the last couple of days in class meetings. But the people that would be involved in these positions would also be responsible for having a consistent detention after school. They would spend some time after school each day making those telephone calls home, and then letting the kids know, hey, listen, if you're X amount more tardies, you may be losing a day of practice, or you might lose this privilege. You might not be able to park on campus for 2 days or something, whatever it might be.
If I may, I do want to clarify that. I think it's a good idea to get our 092 teachers more involved in administration. So making a way for them to do that, I think is a great idea. If you have ideas like this discipline grid, I think you call it something like that, I think that could be as good or better than detentions. I'm not sure, but just talking to people every time they're late to class, I think, maybe you won't say it, but I feel like you also would believe that's got to be a giant waste of your time.
And maybe too, some just good mentoring with some of these teachers that may really, some of these kids, it might really, you know, it's more of reaching out to them. Might help.
Yeah, it is the last thing, and I know the guidance counselors and the social workers, the whole guidance department, I would be the first one to get us 2 more full-time in that department, absolutely. But the issue of chronic absenteeism and chronic lateness to class because you don't want to be there, for me, is best handled with the guidance counselor, because now we're asking, if we were to do the 092, 5 teachers, now we're asking the student to develop a relationship with another person that they might not know, that they might not click with, that doesn't know them, but they have continuity from the guidance department. So I'm not really willing to support 5 of these off the bat for this year.
May I respond to that? One of the things that's really important to maintain our school counseling department is that they absolutely, under no circumstances, should ever become an aspect of discipline. It is not their job to administer discipline. These teachers are going to be, through our direction, our guidance, be administering discipline for class tardiness. We cannot have the school counselors do that.
That's not what I said. I said for the chronic. When I say chronic absenteeism, that's not a behavioral issue. That is an SEL issue.
Yeah,
That's a
that's an
social
emotional
issue.
part.
So if all we're talking is discipline, then this is not an opportunity for an 092. This is not going to give anybody some like elevated experience using an administrative degree. This is, let's get our ISS folks and pay them to stay an hour after school to do detention. I don't know why we need $10,000 worth of people to administer discipline for absentees and tardies.
Well, part of the issue with the administration's duty has been, though, when they're late for class and they're late coming in, they have to address it. The social and emotional part with a kid that's chronic absenteeism, that is the level that's much addressed in counseling job descriptions and an area that they're to really focus in on. You're exactly right there. I think this here is a way to really relieve where an assistant principal, the 2 were doing it, and it's taken a lot of time. And that's why we're trying this route. It's to divert the amount of time and effort since we're down to the 2. So that was the reason.
Mr. Lucky, Mr. Frank, based on your experience over the years and looking at the data that you've resourced, do you see a pattern where these absences and tardies occur at a particular juncture in the school year? In other words, does this start from day one, or is there a period, let's say a peace period, before the flood?
So I think that the peace period does happen, doesn't start at the beginning of the year. What ends up happening is it becomes overwhelming for any one person to address all these things. And the kids know, hey, every instance is not getting addressed. We'll just be tardy for the next class. And then that kind of grows and it snowballs, and then we get to the point where we have these kinds of numbers.
Have you looked at root causes, particularly with regard to absences?
You said in the beginning, have we looked at group causes?
Root
Root
causes
Of absences.
absences. Tardies, everybody's tardy at some point. When they become excessively tardy, well, then there's some issue to be addressed there. But absences are particularly more discomforting for me. And have we any data as to why these chronic absences occur? Is it dissatisfaction with instruction? Is it students just don't want to be in school? Or are there other considerations to be made and addressed?
I don't have an answer for you on that immediately, but I can come back and get you an answer.
Well, then, I don't have an answer. And I'm dissatisfied with that because chronic absenteeism points to some particular problem or problems that somebody should at least investigate and determine if there's a course of action that needs to be applied. If it means continuous parental contact, well, I don't even want to talk about detention. Is there some other consequence? Because we always think in terms of, well, if somebody does something wrong, there should be a consequence. So do we have a set of consequences that are used in a particular case, such as excessive absenteeism?
In the past, we did have attendance that was actually associated with credit for courses, but we no longer have that.
If I may, there was a time where we had loss of credit for 20 or more absences in class.
How did that work?
Well, not so well because it negatively impacted our graduation rate and promotion rate because enough students failed enough classes so they weren't staying with their classes. They moved up and they weren't graduating on time. It increased our dropout rate as well.
Parental feedback with regard to loss of credit. What was your experience there?
They were mostly angry and thought we were something that I don't want to say.
Did their anger transform into action on their part to reduce the absenteeism?
Withdrawal. It increased the number of students who withdrew from Seymour High School before graduation.
But this is for tardy.
No, it's for both, and that was what my comment was gonna be. We can't really have a really thoughtful discussion here because chronic absenteeism and chronic late to class are completely different things.
Two different
Yeah.
things.
I mean, Venn diagram, little bit, but
Just in reference to chronic absenteeism, I'm not proud of our numbers at all, but we did drop from 26 to 20%. Last year we were at 20%, the year before we were at 26%. So we are moving in the right direction.
And we have an issue even with elementary schools. There's, you have a certain group of children. It's really become a nationwide issue.
and punishment isn't the answer to chronic
No,
absenteeism.
no, counseling and support and
Family
trying to
support.
find out what the root
Yeah.
cause is.
So that's kind of one of the
Like
troubles
what he's
with this.
talking about.
Mr. Chairman, I have one last thought, if I may.
Sure.
All right. I would be satisfied by challenging the administration to looking at this year, make comparisons to the board at the end of the school year. Come back to us, tell us what the experience for this particular year was, and at least have some innovative, experimental things that you have come up with, that you've tried, and give us an assessment of how well those things worked or failed to work. Because for me as a board member, We pay you guys fairly well. And we expect you to be innovative, to come up with things, to challenge yourselves, to help reduce this, instead of coming back to us and looking for more people, more bodies to resolve something that appears to happen on a regular basis regardless of the numbers of people you have. So there's one man's thought. I'm done.
Mrs. Bruno.
I appreciate what Mr. Freund said, that this is a problem, that attendance is a problem that needs to be addressed. There's work to do, but I'm encouraged that it's moving in the right direction. And I know this is something as a leadership team you've been working on for years. And I would agree that we need a comprehensive plan that's both proactive and reactive. I know there's some mandates around having attendance teams and communicating with families.
Just from a historical perspective, when the state of Connecticut eliminated our ability to file a family with service needs for truancy, they took everything out of our sales. We have no legal action against kids who are truant at this point. DCF won't take it for a high school kid. The only thing I could do is send a school counselor out or go myself to the school, knock on the door and say, "Where's Johnny?"
I'll check.
So I think this represents some creative thinking, and there may be some positive side effects by
It really is.
kids
It's a way to
connecting.
try to balance.
But it's a Band-Aid.
It's a Band-Aid.
I think it's a one-year solution. Again, it's a Band-Aid that's addressing a budgetary issue that we're struggling with as a board, because this is, and as leadership, because this is the position we're in by our funding. I think it's creative. I think it needs a more comprehensive plan, and I have a feeling this is something you will continue to work on. And this may generate some good ideas, or at least make some connections.
It's worth a try because, like you said, with the amount of workload, with whatever, this is a way to take it off of them. And like I said, to keep the data, see what happens. See if it's successful. It's a Band-Aid approach. We're being very honest.
I'm sorry. I just want to say the part-time secretary that you restored is the attendance secretary. So that wasn't going to be restored. We were really going to be handcuffed. But their role is to make sure all the attendance is perfect, and they generate the letters to go home about the child attendance, or the emails. And she right now we're training her, and we hope to get to the regular emails home as well as the formal letters going home. But she needs training.
Okay, after rereading this and listening to stuff, maybe the title is wrong. Instead of being an attendance officer, it should be tardy officer, because I'm almost hearing that you're talking more about dealing with the tardies than you are with the attendance, because attendance and chronic attendance is counselor's position. And meeting with, you know, with parents and stuff there. Because I know as a former educator, you do that when you have an attendance issue.
Right.
This sounds to me, especially your first sentence, primarily with school tardiness and class tardiness.
Yes.
It doesn't say much about attendance at all. So I like the idea of this if we change the title to tardy officer, and to help with that part of it. That's just my suggestion.
You can do that. You all have that.
I'd like to amend my motion.
I'm more
to tardy
concerned
off.
with absences than I am with.
I don't think we have.
Oh.
I understand, but what I'm saying is, Jim,
I'd like to make a motion to approve the creation
I
of
understand
5
that. So,
tardy
to me,
officers for
tardy-
Seymour High
Hold
School.
on.
What?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Jay.
Oh, I would like to make a motion to approve the creation of 5 tardy officers for Seymour High School.
I'll second.
All right, I heard Stefan.
Go ahead.
Jay.
Go ahead.
Any other questions?
Just a comment for me, I appreciate Mrs. Bruno's comments about kind of a Band-Aid solution. I think for me, understanding it in a little bit more holistic approach of how we deal with it, to have a third of our students be tardy in some way, shape, or somehow seems very, very high. And with October being school improvement plan updates, you know, I'd love to hear more about it as part of the goals for the high school for this year. And at that time, thinking if we can tailor this approach based on a little bit more in-depth conversation about how we deal with it as a whole versus tonight and just approving it.
Yeah, I sort of along the same lines. I definitely am in favor of taking all of the responsibility out of the assistant principal's hands and talking to these students that are tardy. But I would really love to see how the escalating discipline works, other creative ideas. I don't think this is the end of the process, because next year I don't think I would be in favor of this again if we don't learn a lot more or come up with actual solutions to solving the problem, because just talking about it isn't going to solve it. So I'd like to solve it rather than just throw more people's time at it.
I've never, ever seen this board, year one, establish 5 positions for anything. And there's other stuff in here about these teachers. Yeah, they have an 092. That's great. They're going to have access to the children's PowerPoint. They're going to have the authority to create their own progressive disciplinary measures, including talking with administration, athletic directors, team and club coaches and advisors, guidance. This just doesn't feel good to me at all. A kid is late to math class. 1, 2, 3, you got detention tomorrow. I don't know why it's more complicated than that. You're late to school 1 time, you get detention.
Mr. Lucky.
Some kids don't care about detention. They only care about whether it's a club or a sport, and that's a motivating factor when they get to club.
Well, the detention theoretically gets in the way of the club or the sport, theoretically.
Kristen, I think in fairness, we have tried the detention approach. It's probably the most common approach. We have, at least some of us have asked for our administrators to be creative. This feels more creative than just throwing detentions at people.
But what is it? That's what my question is. There's so much in here.
Well, they've had two weeks of life with only one assistant principal. They're learning as they go, and I think we need to.
So we're
give
going to
them
give
time
5 positions for it.
Well,
I really struggle with this.
We've been talking
Yeah,
about this
go
for
to vote.
a half hour.
Go to
I'm
vote.
just going to call the question. Any objections there? Okay. All those in favor?
May I have the motion, please, again?
Jay?
To approve the creation of 5 tardy officers for Seymour High School for the year 23-24.
So, all in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4. Motion passes 5-4. Okay. Where did we leave off? Item 6H. Additional monitor para for in-school suspension at the middle school for 23-24.
Okay, Keith, would you like to come up in regards with this?
Sure. So currently, SMS has 4 paraprofessionals. On a daily basis, we have no subs. We are forced to divide classes and assign them to other classes that are in session. We do not have any excess support. And an in-school suspension monitor is an essential component to any secondary school that is going to provide alternatives to classic out-of-school suspension, as well as be able to offer support for students who are struggling during the course of the day. I wrote a couple of the bullet points, read them for you if you don't have it, but the position is one for someone who oversees in-school suspension, with somebody who can support students who are struggling, who might need time out in class, which happens frequently at the middle school level. We do not have excess staff that can serve in that role. If we were to have a student in ISS, we would not have a person to stay with them throughout the course of the day. I believe in having an ISS program which is comprehensive, which involves connecting with counselors and having restored practice and consequences put into place in an educational component. But it's difficult to have an ISS program without an ISS supervisor. And right now, ISS doesn't have that. The ISS supervisor would also not have data regarding SMS's total number of suspensions from last year, the total number of consequences. I gave it a quick look, and the sheets were populated with lots of entries. I can tell you my experience in middle school as a dean of students and as an assistant principal overseeing discipline. You assign these types of consequences hundreds of occasions throughout the course of the year. So it's a resource that will be utilized and somebody that would be a contributing member of the staff.
Okay, so I have a couple questions with this, and two bookends here with the same thoughts. And I know you might not be able to answer this, you maybe.
We'll try.
Who has handled in-school suspension in the past? Has it been a paraeducator?
Technically.
So I know a little bit of the history. At one point, Seymour Middle School had an ISS supervisor. The position was eliminated. In talking with Ms. Reynolds, there were times last year that during the course of her day, a student would have to stay in the office with her. There were times that they had to put students in the main office copy area. And to me, those are not acceptable alternatives for a student that needs that degree of support and help. It's also not an appropriate place for a student who's being given a consequence to be put in such a public setting for other students to see.
Right, I agree with that. My fear is that if this was something that was handled by a para before, it's a union issue.
It's not, because the bottom para educators are not to do this type of position. Look at your contract. It doesn't, it should have, it's total separate entity.
So I'm not as familiar with the Seymour Paris contract yet. I'm learning. This is a position that in the schools that I've worked in have been non-contracted employees. They have not been contractual members of the parish.
So this is,
It's a total separate
we're
topic.
creating a new position.
You would be creating a new
If this
position.
was eliminated,
It
and
was-
this is a $18 an hour with no additional benefits.
Kristen, do you choose?
There are ISS paraprofessionals at the high school, correct?
We use teachers doing their duties of PSI primarily.
There's maybe 2 instances, 2 classes out of a 4-day rotation that is covered by a para, every other time it's covered by a certified teacher.
And is that a monitor paraprofessor or instructional paraprofessional? I'm just trying to establish, like, do we have in our contract that a paraprofessional of some classification can be an ISS person without them having the need to make a new position? Instructional?
Instructional.
You don't know the contract, Chris?
Yeah, I don't see any,
It's on there. It's all instructional. It's
I don't see anything
nothing dealing with.
that is in that contract for in-school suspension coordinator, or not a
Historically, in the past,
coordinator.
years ago, 7 years ago, it was always just covered by a paraprofessional.
Special ed paraprofessional, that is eliminated.
It's definitely not a part, and this was eliminated in the past. Sure, that was many years ago. I don't know how long ago.
All right. I'm going to make a motion, but I think that we have to be careful with your description, because you put the word in supervisor, and supervisor, what that means to people is administrator of some sort. So maybe it should be in-school suspension, monitor, aid, what a person, then we don't have to worry about any kind of sexist comments if we say person.
But we're creating the position.
Yes.
So we need to create that position.
Are you gonna call them a coordinator, or are you gonna call them a?
Well, let's not use that word.
No, that's not, that gets into the union. We won't go there.
Well, the motion is probably the best. I think the description doesn't always fit the motion. That's what I'm saying. So I'll make a motion to approve an additional monitor to be utilized in ISS at Seymour Middle School for 2023, 2024 school year.
All right, a motion
I'll
by
second.
Ed, second by Beth. Any other discussion?
So this person is going to be in the para union?
No.
No.
It's got to be a
It
standalone.
says an additional monitor paraeducator. How could that not be union?
I didn't say,
Didn't
the motion
include
didn't
her.
say
It
that.
says on the agenda, but the attachment.
No, my
So
motion
we're
did
gonna have
not.
a contract employee
No.
for this?
No.
Where they fit? Someone's either in a union or they're a contract.
They're almost like a long-term sub. They're a standalone position, like when you created long-term subs. This person can also fill in and be a substitute teacher because they have to have their degree that can be approved on the substitute list. But this one basically is like a monitor of some sort that's not a para educator.
So this is not a position that we've had in the past. I think there's not a sort of another change other than leadership. And you're coming forward with good ideas, and we want that. But there's not a change that, you know, due to any factors we didn't know at budget time that would require this. So I'm feeling like this should be part of the budget discussion for next year.
Did someone say if the paraprofessional union are they okay with this? Because we already have precedent, we heard it at the high school, that we've got paraeducators, instructional paras covering ISS. So I'm not really sure why the union would be okay with having an ISS monitor who's not in the union at the middle school.
Well, it's strictly a separate entity, and the high school, basically, when you look at the contract, they're paraeducators. They're not really to be doing that, in all true fairness. So let's go back to the contract.
I'm actually trying to make this easier,
Yeah.
right? Can't we just hire another para for the middle school and have them, you know, work in ISS? Like, I don't know why, like, and again, we don't have to.
It's not in
Right,
the
but what's in the contract, is there something in the contract that that ISS can be slotted into, in the same way that a para can go into a classroom, or, do you know what I'm saying? Like, in the same way a para can monitor the hallways, or monitor recess. And I understand this is a bigger deal than that, but.
For you guys to
We've
discuss.
had standalone lunch monitors.
We have.
We have had that. Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, recess and lunch, we got
They're
them in
not
chat.
part of the union?
Go ahead.
So, I want to be as transparent and genuine in how I present what I'm trying to accomplish. And again,
This is needed.
I received the math teacher tonight, so eternal grief. I'm asking for more, but I'm trying to accomplish two things with this position, in addition to having an ISS person. And the way that I've found, well, for every school that I've worked in, the IS position is not a contractual position. It's an employee who agrees to the wage, there are no benefits. That's the way it was set up in my former district. That's the way it was set up in Fairfield, when I worked in Fairfield. By having a non-contracted ISS monitor, or whatever the title is of the position, and having somebody with a degree, that person could also be used to cover classes. The same as a building sub can be used as well. But by having a person both to fill this position and who has that level of qualification, we could relieve what's already been an issue within the first 2 weeks of school. If we have one teacher out, we have nobody to cover. And I'm preaching to the choir if I tell you how difficult it is to find substitute teachers right now. The salary rate is on par with what a para would make. Otherwise, where would the incentive be for somebody to want this position? But it's without benefits, and it's somebody that on a daily basis will be put to work, either as a substitute or covering ISS. We have students who are in ISS, lunch detention, after school detention. That would be their priority, but they would also be working as building substitutes as well, which is something that my understanding of the para contract is something we can't do right now. So I'm trying to kill two birds with one stone
middle school, I don't have as much staff with resources with the prep times that the high school has. It's different.
All right.
Well,
so
they've
we
got
have a-
prep times, I
we
think,
still
let's
have
phrase
a-
that.
I'm hoping that you can create this position if it doesn't exist.
Well, we do have a motion to create the in-school suspension monitor at the middle school. Anything else? Go ahead.
Do we have building subs in the budget, or did we cut those?
We cut those, we proposed three, one for the two elementaries in the middle, because the high school could cover it with their schedule. And that was one of the things that we cut, was the long-term sub, which would,
Yes.
and they were successful.
Building subs.
They were successful, they didn't cost that much, it was just providing insurance benefits, but you can do it without.
Are we allowed to have a full-time employee and not give them benefits?
If they
So my
don't,
experience has been if they're under 40 hours, you do not
If
have-
they're under 40 hours.
It's a 38-hour week position.
and obviously if that employee was to exceed 40 hours, we would have to pay them time and a half. I think that's all.
Yes, it's a labor law.
And Dr. Compton, where would
Yes.
this money come from?
Basically, when you look at the budget, just in general, you know, there's areas of where maybe that somebody, I hate to say it, sometimes people don't take family insurance, or maybe they do a waiver, whatever. For example, even the high school right now, we don't currently have an assistant principal, so there was a saving of $12,000 for insurance that nobody's using right now, so that paid for 10,000 out of the 12. I hated to be that blunt or to say, put that out there, that's not very good. You know, I'm talking budget, I'm talking what's really in the budget. We're very tight, we're very conservative, we watch this, we monitor this every month and ongoing. Salvatore looks at constantly.
Okay, we have our motion. Any other questions?
I think the main purpose is this could be a long-term, being substitute quite a bit could be a win-win to help pay for a lot of it. I can tell you, last year, Ms. Reynolds kept the children at a table many times in her office.
So that's actually the answer, that this position can be funded out of our substitute line item in the budget.
Yes, it could be. Yes, that is excellent. That's right. That's smart.
So that's where this comes from. And it doesn't mean that the substitute will always be in a classroom, but it does mean that it would be with students.
Yes. That's excellent thinking.
I'm just more comfortable, if we need a building sub, then we should reinstate a building sub position. That centers teaching and learning, right? I'm not comfortable creating this position without having some consistency between how things are monitored between the middle school and the high school. I'm fine if we have the funds to reinstate a building sub for the middle school rather than creating this position.
Well, I feel like it lends a little bit of parity to the high school, because the high school does have a staffed ISS program, and it really is an integral part of the progressive disciplinary structure.
They're able to cover with substitutes because of their schedule.
Flexibility.
They really do. They're able. The middle school is not. We're in the process, Mrs. Feige's in the process of recruiting substitute teachers. What's the idea? If we could put 3 long-term subs, 2 in the elementaries and 1 here in the middle school. And the middle school, you know, the second scenario would be, it could be a long-term sub / in-school monitor, but he really needs this. He's sincere, and he's like a pseudo, you're also going to have that person be a substitute whenever they weren't doing in-school suspension.
Are we saying that middle school is the neglected child?
Yep. Well, it hasn't had the resources that a high school has, and I don't mean that in a bad way.
Well, that's for a principal to come forward to make those needs known to the board, and as this principal has done, but through no fault of his own, if he's lacking resources.
I'd like to call the question.
Not yet, anyway.
All right, I have Jay calling the question. Any objections? All right. Hearing none, we have a motion to create a in-school suspension monitor. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Yep. Motion passes 7-1-1.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the creation of 2 BCBA teacher specialists district-wide.
Okay, I have a motion by Jay. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Stramello. Do you have anything on this?
This money, there's budgeted $45,000. Ain't gonna be that kind of money, but what I'm saying is that there is in the line item budget in regards with BCBA support. 3 of our board members had excellent questions in regards about with this position and as a stipend and helping support the BCBA. These are be certified BCA people as well, in regards that they would be able to do some observations of any behavioral plan that they would write or any FBAs and BIPs. So that was important, and I discussed that, a plan of how that would be taken care of, where they could definitely do that because of the difference in times. We have 2 that are certified now. Don't know how this is going to work. I hope you will give me an opportunity. Like I told Dr. Bull, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Then we won't come back and reinstate it. Also send it to the lady at the State Department in regards as a stipend idea, because it's an area right now, we have 1, and he's got a pretty good coordinated schedule, but it takes hours to do these behavioral plans and the data and all the stuff. And it's worth a try. We have 2 other people that are in the process of whatever down the road. Don't know how this will work. Let's try. Please give me a chance.
All right, anything else?
A couple of questions.
Yeah.
I see that the hourly rate would be the same as the board certified behavioral analyst. What is the overall impact on budget for both of the stipends? What is the annual stipend for each?
The annual stipend would vary based upon how much work they did. Basically, it's around $60 an hour, $65 an hour, based upon what his hourly rate is. If you contract these people out, they're $90, $100. We contracted one out last year, and it was over $130,000. It's just worth an attempt. They'd have to keep a log. They would have to show exactly the amount of hours and a limit in regards to what they did.
Do you have a limit in mind? Like what we just needed to understand what the budget impact, and is this coming out of the general, is this
No.
coming out of our town budget or grants?
This is coming out of our board budget. It was put under BCBA. It was in our line item budget. We budgeted it back, and I actually mentioned it in the spring and in July, and I think you said, Kristen, that, Dr. Crum, that's a good idea. Maybe that could work.
So this is in the budget? It's not
in the
going to
budget.
exceed $45,000?
Oh, gosh, no.
Okay.
No, it won't exceed that much.
Great.
No, more like 25, 20.
Okay.
25, 30 most. It might even be that much. It's all about how many plans and what they do. And they'll keep a timesheet, they'll keep a log, and show exactly, they're going to meet with Dr. Boyle as well as the BCBA, and we'll see how it goes. We'll give you an update as well.
All right,
But
anything
this
else?
is budgeted for.
I think this is an interesting opportunity to build some internal capacity. I think it's something, that, again, we have to monitor and see how it works, and I'm interested to hear that, but I think there's a need.
All right, if nothing else, all those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes 8-0-1 with Mr. Garofalo abstaining. Item J is the wrestling mats. I didn't see anything attached to this. I don't know if Dr. Compton or Ed or Jay.
No.
No.
I'm gonna, And Mrs. Federogen and I have been talking about this, I've been talking with Tim Connors about it, and things have changed within the time I talked to you to the time we came to this meeting, so I'm gonna make a motion. Unfortunately, I should have told you guys to leave, but I'll make a motion that we postpone this until the next meeting.
Motion by Ed. Do
I
have-
thought I had it solved, but it didn't work.
do I have a second? Second by Stefan. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Passes 9-0-0.
I'd like to make a motion to add to the agenda for the cross-country before they leave. Oh. Oh.
You all have a copy of that, add to the agenda. Everybody got a copy?
I just didn't know if they wanted to be here.
We're wanting to add this to the agenda, Kathy. Yeah, you want-
Well, I'm trying to. I didn't know if you.
Everybody got their copy on this? All right.
Okay, I'd like to
Yeah,
make a
I
motion
forgot
to
about
add
that.
to the agenda a
Sorry.
discussion of the middle school cross-country program.
Motion by Jay, second by Stefan. Any discussion? All those in favor? All those in favor? Opposed? Passes 9-0-0.
We have a proposal here from the athletic director and assistant athletic director to combine the high school and middle school cross-country programs for this year due to the lack of lack of coaching coaches available. It seems that they'd like to split the stipend for the middle school position between the two coaches at the high school. So I would like to see that happen, just for more kids. I think it's a great opportunity for middle school kids, especially something like cross-country, where they could keep a little bit more kids than maybe some of the other sports. So I think this is a really innovative and creative way for them to still keep the program alive. So kudos to the athletic department. And I'd like to make a motion to reapportion the stipend for the 23-24 year for the middle school cross-country program to the high school coaches.
I'll second.
Nobody that would do it.
Motion by Jay, second by Ed. Any other discussion? Do you want to say anything, or are you ready to go? Or?
Thank you for being creative on this. You had nobody that would.
We've been trying all summer to try to find people to fill positions. We were able to fill the 3 positions for girls soccer, boys soccer, and volleyball. And we scoured, and when I say me, Kathleen, at the middle school, went after a whole bunch of teachers to see if they could get some interest. Dave and I went after the high school teachers, anybody to try to take this position on, because we really are trying to get the middle school sports back and flourishing. And we couldn't find anyone. And Jamie Yak actually kind of laughed about it one day, and he said, well, we could take them on. And the more we talked about it, is it a possibility to have them get a bus from here down to there? Could we have the high school kids run as part of their practice up to here and do something? And then the more we thought of it, we thought it'd really be a great opportunity for the high school kids to come mentor those middle school kids and really start to develop a program. In lack of a coach being here, I think it's a great opportunity for our middle school kids and our high school kids to kind of put this together. And I'm glad that, OC and JVAC are willing to do this. There's already between 17 and 20 kids signed up for cross-country at the middle school.
Yeah, it's great.
I was just thinking of something, and hopefully it's not going to be considered recruiting, because that there's that thing with the high school recruiting from the middle school to come to the high school because of a sport, so that, I don't know if that would mess it up, because believe it or not, if I, as a high school coach, was to take an 8th grade kid on a bus to go to a high school game, that would be considered recruiting, and me as a high school coach in high school could get in trouble to trying to recruit a kid.
Right, we're having them practice together. The middle school, so the middle school typically does 3 days a week, high school does 6 days a week. So they would practice together on those 3 days. But if there's a meet, then, we have a few away meets for the high school. The middle school kids would not go. They would just stay here for whatever meets they might do. But, and either Mr. Shevitz will take the bus with just the middle school kids, or, vice versa. They're going to be separate in terms of their competitions. It's strictly for practice purposes that they would, come together.
I'm being overly cautious.
Well, I can reach out to CIAC and make sure that they're okay with it.
I would think there's got to be high schools that have, I think Derby had 7th and 8th grade in their high school. So I'm sure that that's allowed, you know what I mean?
No, they have separate buildings.
In the past, though, they didn't. They were together.
In the past, but
Yeah.
we're talking about now, they have a separate building.
I don't, yeah.
I'm just being overly cautious.
We've done similar things with, like, debate. I feel like the high school debate team, has come down
They've worked
here.
together some.
But-
Mentored.
The different rules, I
Yeah, because
understand that.
there's different.
Yeah, I'm just talking about practice in terms of the high school interacting with the middle. And our girls' cross-country team was very successful last year, correct?
Yes, the first ever in the winning the region.
Yeah, so we want to keep that tradition going, and that's
Oh, I
great.
think it's a good idea. I'm just, as I said, just being overly cautious, God forbid.
I'm sure,
because of this.
sorry, through the chair, I'm sure they could get some further clarification if they had to, but at least they don't have to wait till October.
No,
to get the
I'm
ball
not
rolling.
saying postpone it.
All right.
She'll just
So
check and make
we
sure.
have a motion. If you hear anything, please let Dr.
Can
Compton
I
know.
ask one
Okay.
question? Is there still efforts going on to have, because you mentioned participation in middle school sports, I know I've heard that there used to be a late bus to accommodate these kids that want to participate, and this is my 3rd year in the school and haven't seen one, so is that in the discussion?
We're gonna add a after-school bus. We couldn't get a driver before, so we're trying to get that again.
Yeah, we're in the process of talking to the bus company about adding a late bus, hoping to get it
Right.
started next week.
Just trying to get that
Not
back
only
in
for
place,
sports,
and
but
have
also
drivers.
for
Yeah, no, I meant any extracurricular.
Yeah, so that's in the works.
I think
To
that might
help
help
with
your
the kids.
participation levels with some of the things, so that's great.
Help the parents and
Well, yeah, busing has been a huge issue, as you know, for the last few years. And this past year, when we reached out to the bus company, they said that they have enough drivers, they have enough buses, and they believe they'll be able to accommodate us. And in the last 2 weeks, for all our high school athletics, they've met the times that we needed them. So hopefully going forward, we'll have buses available.
all right.
All right, anything else? All right, hearing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? 900. Okay, item 7, we have the information with the Finance Committee, designations of certified, non-certified. Any questions on that section? Item 8, Board of Ed comments, superintendent report. I don't have anything in particular. It's just, one of the things I like to mention is the high school administrators are gone. It's just 2 left. These are the kind of things, you both touched on it, that we like to hear, things that we need and data to support it. And it's kind of lousy that it's September. So hopefully we'll hear more about issues with data supporting it as we go into the budget process. That's pretty much it for me. Anything for me?
Yeah, I would just quick say that we've spent 2 hours plus tonight arguing about problems created straight from our town's poor support of our budget this past year. Obviously we're doing all we can to make things right, but losing teachers, losing administrators, all of these things that are leading to real problems right now. I don't know how many people will stick around to listen to 3 hours of a meeting tonight, but for anyone that does, I hope that what you're seeing tonight, and this is not going to be the end of the problem, perhaps inspires some people to start thinking about different ways that they can help support our Board of Education here. That's it.
Just Chris and I talked briefly, we should probably put on our agenda in the next few months to talk about, or maybe perhaps our attorneys can come and speak to us about the impacts on some of this new legislation. There's a lot in here, and given our budget constraints this year and probably next, there will be, from my quick review, financial impacts based on some of this new legislation. So I think the sooner we can get that in front of the board in terms of what is going to affect us or have implications on our budget and our policies and there's a lot in here, including making sure that even our own board information is up on the website, including agenda material. So it'd be great to hear from our attorney, as we discussed, along with the superintendent, what kind of things we can expect or have to change to meet the new legislation.
The new legislative updates are unbelievable this year, and there's no support budget-wise or mandates, but they're not giving any budget from the state level.
Beth and I had a talk before. I'm going to reach out to Floyd tomorrow, see if we can get some guidance on what we need to do yesterday. Because there is some stuff in that report that needs to be handled already, and I'm not sure we're compliant on everything. So I'll keep you posted on that. Kristen? Jay?
I just wanted to talk about something that Mrs. Harmon touched upon a little bit before about the finance and transfers. I did mention this to Dr. Compton, but I think this is heavy on some of the budget implications, as my colleague Mr. Bohuniak said, and I think it's incumbent upon us to really track the dollar. That if we are going to be adding things and making some changes, which again are supported with data and that we need them, we do need to know where that's coming out of from the other side. And so I really I hate to charge my colleague Mrs. Harmling and her finance committee, but I think we really need, like, instead of monthly, we need a better system, and I think you touched upon that maybe.
We don't have a problem with this. There's no problem with a system. We just need to, we've talked about as a finance committee on a quarterly basis looking and making transfers. And so we will take it on as a finance committee to document that and report back on a quarterly basis. Because you really can't do it any more than quarterly. I don't think.
I think just to add to that, I think the controls are in place. I think Sal's done a great job to increase the controls in place. I think the challenge for us is that as the budget gets tighter and tighter, that ability to have variations or transfers, there's more spotlight on it because there isn't another place for it to come from. So I think this is a byproduct of the pain that we're feeling from this budget. So I think it's a great point, Jay, that we really need, because of that, we really need to have kind of just a little bit more of a spotlight, and I think our setting some guide rails around transfers and how often we see it or on a monthly is a great suggestion.
And I just think that we maybe need to spend a little bit more time so that we could understand as a whole group, like we do sometimes with liaison or whatnot, we bring forward athletic stuff, just because it's important, when it comes towards budget season, we could then say, like, here's some of the things where we had to make some adjustments based on the implications.
Yeah, the biggest problem is the timing, right? Because the biggest problem is the timing. Because we put the budget out in January, and we don't really know where things are going to come from and go to until at least May at the earliest. So it becomes this kind of cat and mouse thing. But your point is well taken, and it's true, and we know it. We've been saying it for a while. The problem is the timing. Because theoretically, there's no real reason to make transfers until the end of the year, right? Because you're taking from a line item that you might need the money and you might not. So you might take it from electricity just to put it right back into electricity from somewhere else. So that's why I say it really can't be more than quarterly. And the timing of the budget just stinks because we don't have enough time to learn from the year we're in before we plan the next year.
But
I mean, if I had my way, we wouldn't show anybody a budget until at least April.
I just think, again, as we're doing this, though, we have to be mindful of what we're gonna then roll over. You know, we just did a couple things this year that were for this 1 year. You know, how are we gonna track that to see if we are gonna roll them over into the budget?
Oh, I mean, that'll absolutely be in, you know, what we used to call the level services budget, and all that'll be taken into account when that forecast is made for next year. Yes.
Good. Ed?
Just I would encourage people to go to the Cape Conference. It's coming up in November if you haven't signed up
Yeah.
already. I mean, you can go just for a Friday. You don't have to stay overnight if you don't choose to. It does go Friday into Saturday. And, you know, it's a great way to get knowledge and to hear from other boards what they're doing.
November 16th, 17th, during those dates, look at that Friday and that.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
forget
have
the
them right
exact
with me, but
dates.
I can look.
Because I know that Jay and I have signed up for it again.
I plan on attending this year.
I anticipate I'll be going.
I'm sorry.
I think I'll be going.
Oh, that's good.
Anything else?
No, I'm the second.
Jim?
Yes, I was underwhelmed by the high school's presentation in its attempts to convince us that they needed more individuals to resolve a perennial problem, which was or is not of their making, as far as I could tell. But in their attempt to convince us, I lacked information, such as what have they done over the years to minimize or eliminate the number of tardies or absences, involvement of parents, and so forth and so on. What things can they not do, for example, to students legally or ethically that would prevent them from trying things, such as, can we fine students? Have they taken privileges away from students in the past? Example, specifically, take their parking privilege to those students who are in that category that drive to school. Or if they're in sports, if they're chronic tardies or absentees, bench them and they don't play a game or two or three and so forth. None of this came forward. So I don't understand everything that the high school has done to mitigate the problem through their own efforts. And instead are looking for numbers of people to try to solve the problem. I'm done.
Everything's been said.
Shannon? All right, Dr. Compton?
It's getting late, we've got 2 more items to cover in executive session. I would just like to say that we got the start of the new year, the school year off on a really great start. The past last week with the 3 days with the heat was unbelievable, especially Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It really was tough. We weathered it, we got through it. It's been an experience for everybody across the country that went into this heat index and all the stuff that was going on. But it was tough on our kids, tough on our teachers, especially at Bungie. But we made it through. I even actually, as you know, got on a school bus and rode 45 minutes. So I knew how intense it was. But I think, you know, like I said, tonight, yeah, there are some Band-Aid approaches here. And there are some reasons why that I asked for some things that I did. This budget process, it's got to start in October. It's got to start next month and looking at cost of personnel, cost of mandates, cost of what we're dealing with, cost of contracts. It's got to take, again, first select woman in town continuing to work with us. We've got these school budgets are, again, it just goes back, our kids are our most precious assets. And times are getting tougher, budgets are getting tougher. These mandates are just unrealistic, what's being put on us. And I say that in a sincere way, not a mean way. So We've got to get after it, and we've got to have the appropriate staffing. That's what it really comes down to. Okay?
Any questions for Dr. Compton? All right, moving on.
I'd like to make a motion to add to the agenda the following: discussion and possible action regarding a matter involving student attendance.
Motion by Ed, second by Jay. All those in favor? Opposed, passes 9-0-0. So we have, what is this now? Item 8, no, I'm sorry, 9A. Discussion, possible action regarding a matter of student attendance.
Both of these are executive session items.
Oh, I have to do
Both
So
that,
we added to the agenda now.
Okay, so now I have to make a second motion that the Seymour Board of Education enter executive session in accordance with the provisions of Connecticut General State Statutes 1-225F and 1-231G and 1-206. E, that would result in the disclosure of public records or the information contained therein as described in Connecticut General Statute, Sections 1-2110B, 2, 11, and 17, and that the following individuals be invited to attend the executive session: Dr. Compton, Dr. Boyle, and Mr. Bucci.
All right, a motion by Ed.
Second.
Jay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, okay, board is entering executive session at 10:06. obviously, July 1st.
Yeah.
From July 1st, 2023, the last to June 30th, 2026, with an increase of 2.25%.
I'll second that.
Motion by me, second by Ed. Any other discussion? Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
those in favor?
Aye.
We'll get in trouble over giving them a raise. No, come on.
We
All
will.
administrators got a raise, and